Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Marvel, the game I made invaded reality. Chapter 1, Liberty City, Hell's Kitchen, Merlin Modification Shop. It was August at this time, and the weather was hot. During the day, there were not many people walking around on the streets, but at night, people from all walks of life began to appear in the streets and alleys of Liberty City. Sin and luxury go hand in hand. In the vast workshop under bright lights, a slanted steel plate car is placed on the workstation, and a young man in blue overalls is holding a welding torch, constantly welding and strengthening the joint. The appearance of the whole car is a bit weird, like a formula car, with a very low chassis and only a crude steel frame. And the most special thing is the slope of the front section of the car body, which looks like a bucket. Clatter. The shutter door slowly rose, accompanied by a low roar of a locomotive. A man was wearing a black leather jacket, with a circular target imprint on his forehead, and a crazy bald head riding a motorcycle. The motorcycle drove into the workshop. After entering the door, Bullseye got off the stalled motorcycle and looked at the young man wearing goggles who was concentrating on his work. He did not disturb him, but leaned on the seat playing with darts and waited. The blinding white light flashed from time to time, making Bullseye frown. To be honest, for him who often focuses on the crosshairs, he doesn't like this kind of white light that can burn his eyes. Okay, put it on for me. Plutonium. Bullseye secretly memorized it. By the way, I need a few Mk2 sniper rifles. Bullseye caught it, took a sip from the pull tab, and glanced at the boy in front of him. He had profound features, a messy black hair hanging down to his forehead, and he still had the immaturity of a high school student. You actually modified a Batmobile. How is its performance? Bullseye couldn't help but move closer and stroke the car body in amazement. The last Pluto has been reserved. If you want it, you have to wait a week. These weapons are still relatively popular, so there are not many stocks. The boy in front of him is named Merlin Shaw, the owner of this modification shop, but in Hell's Kitchen, it is not easy to preserve the storefront. Merlin is not from this world, or the soul is not. But correspondingly, it will definitely be much more expensive. The evil Pluto laser rifle is no more criticized than in the 3-person 1-dog game, and the effect in reality is obviously much better. The red Ducati drew a red phantom on the street. Merlin felt the strong wind and afterimages whizzing by his ears. He lowered his body and a trace of excitement flashed in his eyes. You want to carry out an assassination? Upon hearing this, Merlin raised his eyebrows and looked at him in surprise. By the way, I remember that school will start soon. How are the darts prepared for me? He asked casually on the way to the warehouse. The white smoke rising from the electric welding slowly drifted to the sky above the workshop, and was finally sucked into the outside air by the exhaust fan. There are still 3 boxes of burst bullets, a total of 36 pieces, and 6 boxes of armor-piercing bullets, a total of 72 pieces. There are still Mk2 sniper rifles. Bullseye crushed the can, and while speaking, accurately threw it into the trash can next to the rolling door. Come with me. It's being made for you. In his previous life, he was an extreme sports enthusiast. Most of his favorite games were shooting and racing games, and his favorite game was Morality and the Rule of Law, followed by Resident Evil, Call of Duty, and Halo. Then you need to find some tungsten alloy. Feelings can't be too cheap, right? Merlin tilted his head and teased. How much explosive bullets do you still have in stock? Our boss wants them all. It is conceivable that it is difficult to buy this controlled raw material, and he doesn't have many. He recognized Merlin's knife forging skills very much, and the darts he made fit his hand very well. Although Merlin Shaw was not very old, he was a master in vehicle modification. The armored car Skeleton Horse was considered the name of Merlin's modified car dealership in Hell's Kitchen. Evil Pluto also comes. He also time-traveled into the body of this Westerner, and with him came the system in his mind, the 9th Art Technology System. What's the matter? The boy put the goggles on the workbench next to him, then walked to the refrigerator in the corner, picked up a bottle of Coca-Cola and drank it, throwing a bottle over by the way. In the backyard, modified sports cars and sedans were lined up side by side. The gorgeous appearance and some technological designs made Bullseye's eyes brighten up immediately. Sizzle. After welding the last node, the young man took off his goggles and looked at the visitors of the modification shop. But I don't know if it's because the god of death is not very skilled in business. When he woke up again, he had already transmigrated into a high school student in Queens district of Liberty City. In addition, the other party is also responsible for the sale and modification of weapons. Although it is not the largest seller in Hell's Kitchen, all of the products it sells are high-quality products. You're about to take over the whole underground, and you're actually carrying out assassinations. Merlin complained, and then led Bullseye to the backyard of the modified car shop. What attracted him the most was a black body with a big butt, a front body that occupied most of the vehicle, and a large round mouth. It looked like a seahorse from the front, with a smooth appearance and full of future technology. "How much is the price?" he asked curiously. Not to mention explosive bullets and Mk2 heavy sniper rifles, Evil Pluto is a laser weapon that is perfect for invasion and assassination. After sending Bullseye away, Merlin looked at the time, turned off the lights in the workshop, hung up the rest sign, and left Hell's Kitchen on his Ducati 916. But for Kingpin, it shouldn't be too difficult. In an underground racing competition, he did not escape death after all, and fell off a cliff to his death. No problem. It ranges from 1,000 to 3,000 million. If you can get me plutonium elements, it can be cheaper. Plutonium elements are an important raw material for the atomic energy industry. Many vehicle technologies and engine technologies in the 5-star Good Citizen game need to be used. That name is Vigilante, and now the engine is missing. His real name was Merlin Shaw. After his father died in Hell's Kitchen, he was found and beaten to death by his enemies. "If you can, make me some bat darts. I want to try to see if they work." After seeing the Batmobile, Bullseye also felt a little itchy. But he didn't dare to underestimate the other party. "Yes, how much can it sell for?" Bullseye didn't explain much. That is, by publishing the game, the technology in the corresponding game can be obtained according to the influence. And the first game the system gave him was a game with a high degree of freedom, and it was also his favorite game, Morality and the Rule of Law 5. An action-adventure open-ended game and a good citizen simulator. After the game was released, without exception, it ushered in an explosion, and quickly swept the entire internet. After getting the system reward, of course it was an old-fashioned revenge plan. After wiping out all the enemies, he took over the modification shop as a trading place. After all, his identity is there, and many rare materials and equipment are not accessible to him, and can only be obtained through other contacts. As the reputation of the weapon performance of the modification shop gradually spread in Hell's Kitchen, Kingpin also noticed him, so many of his materials were provided by the other party. Of course, the subsequent progress has also accelerated a lot, and the atomic energy engine of the vehicle has also been developed recently. Wall Apartments, Roosevelt Road, Queens. As the low roar gradually disappeared, Merlin stepped out of the car and took the elevator to his home. Just as he inserted the key and twisted it, a serious reprimand sounded beside him. "Merlin, you must wear a helmet when riding in the future, and don't come back so late. It's too dangerous for you to ride a motorcycle on the street." Prestige value has reached 350 million. Get rewards: Cone Phantom Modification Technology, Lester Hacking Technology, 801 Batty Technology. Quanfu Bank Errand, is there anyone together? He is also Merlin's neighbor. God of Wealth Lester. Although Merlin's father is a non-staff member and has a close relationship with Manhattan Sheriff George, some things that happened during the passage can still work. It has been 3 months since the game was released. In this era, the number of downloads can reach 300 million, which is already the #1 existence in the game industry. "This is my first time playing Doomsday, is there anyone with me?" George Stacy, the sheriff of Liberty City, Manhattan and the father of his classmate Gwen Stacy. "Now that we have obtained the electromagnetic pulse gun technology, we must find a way to obtain the desired equipment and materials." Merlin's beard, "This game is really shocking. I feel like the games I played before were all filthy." In the next room, after Merlin fried a finger pancake for supper, he washed up and lay down on the bed, immersed in the system. Free press. Although the game has a lot of violence, it is still an excellent game. Go to the island, bring new people to the island. Merlin was not surprised by this. From the many weapons and modified vehicles sold, it was impossible for Jin to turn a blind eye to him. On the day the holiday ended, Merlin turned on his own system. He picked it up and looked at it. It was the account information. Therefore, George, who promised to take care of Merlin, was very guilty of this. When he opened his eyes after time travel, the first thing he saw was George's face full of guilt. As the game became popular, in addition to game forums, major newspapers also reported on the game. The last time he was killed by his enemies because he exposed his identity, the original body was also caught on the way to school. George didn't speak, just poured himself another glass of wine. After reading the forum for a while, Merlin felt sleepy and fell into a deep sleep. In the last half-month, no major accidents occurred in Merlin's modification shop. It seemed that it was because of Jin Bing's intentional care, so no one who was short-sighted dared to make trouble. It should be paid and received the goods, and the money was sent. However, Merlin didn't intend to stop there. When the time was ripe, the real version would also be launched, and Liberty City would be freer by then. Did someone take me to the casino? Mainly to unlock clothes. The Daily Bugle. Morality and Law 5 is not only a crazy and fun video game, but also a dark satire on the contemporary existence of Eagle Country. Brook Times. This is a game that surpasses all single-player and online games. Online and offline, the three protagonists have their own background stories. This is a huge sandbox. When he saw today's reward, Merlin's eyes suddenly lit up. Boom. There was no response from the room. George pursed his lips and grinned, and returned to his home helplessly. Who said money carts can be opened with guns? Already poor. That's not because you didn't know what you were busy with all day, so those people went directly to the school. Regarding this, the wife had nothing to do but complained. Of course, although there are many praises, there are also many criticisms. George looked at the closed door, opened his mouth, and finally sighed. How to unlock the explosive bullet, ask for a tutorial. No, that kid runs to his father's modification shop every day, and he doesn't want to go anywhere. George shook his head, like a silent cowboy, he can't be pulled back. Oh shiete, I just went to Senku to borrow a plane to play, why did I get Samsung right away as soon as I got in? After digesting the technology in his mind, Merlin opened his laptop again and browsed the game forum. The door of the room next door opened quickly, and an upright middle-aged man in a suit came out. He looked helplessly at the boy in overalls with sharp eyes. Los Santos is certainly no exception. The place where the dream begins, Bayong Katoon. There was a trace of disappointment on his face when he saw that the technology he wanted was not available. The reputation value has reached 300 million, and rewards are issued. Super combustion technology, electromagnetic pulse gun technology, and Mk2 fighter gun. Yuanbin's father was an offline member of the Liberty City Police Department, and he was also a good friend with George. He smothered the wine in the wine glass into his mouth a little depressed. How about letting Gwen take him to join the band? Maybe he should relax and divert his attention. After George poured a glass of wine and sat back on the sofa, his wife suggested. Facing the questioning eyes of his wife on the sofa, he could only shrug helplessly. Merlin, I understand that you want to remember your father through the modification shop, but Hell's Kitchen is too messy, and it's dangerous to be a child. Well, I see, thank you. Merlin had never known how to face the other party's kindness, so he could only smile back kindly, and then opened the door and entered his home. Rewards are issued every 50 increase, and each time the rewards range from 3 to 10 technical materials, mainly depending on the difficulty of the technology. Ding! Just as Merlin was looking at the online comments with great interest, the phone suddenly rang. So, this holiday, I hope, you can stay at home obediently. Lester's hacking ability is undoubted. Not only can he hack into the police system to cancel bounties, but he can also help you post bounties for others. In addition, it can also decrypt Phobol's plan. Many large-scale cases both online and offline were planned by him. I just ate too much. Lester charges a fixed fee of 20.00%. With his ability, he is already very conscientious in reality. But if he had to choose, he would still prefer Pavel, who has a good attitude and only charges. Merlin rubbed his swollen brows. The amount of knowledge and information rewarded today is a bit large, so he needs to take it easy. However, the excitement in his heart made him temporarily abandon the pain in his head. Armed with Lester's hacking skills, a real-life simulator can be built. Crash. Just as Merlin was envisioning the reality simulator plan, the rolling shutter door suddenly rose. Immediately afterwards, a tough guy with a tough appearance and a burly figure walked in. "I've already studied, wait until Saturday." Merlin turned around, but he couldn't help being stunned when he saw the person coming. Generally speaking, if the pistol can be fired continuously because of the handheld reason, the consequence of the recoil is that the accuracy will be reduced. If you add a mop to stabilize the recoil, it is better to buy a micro-punch directly. Frank's hands were already itching. Hearing Merlin's words, Frank's eyes flickered immediately, and the first thing that came to mind was a huge behind-the-scenes criminal organization. Frank caught the pistol and found that the bore of the pistol was much thicker than ordinary pistols, and there seemed to be some buffer devices installed inside. "Do you need a vehicle? The slope magic weapon in the workshop has just been completed, ensuring that you can travel unimpeded on the street." He didn't expect that the young boy in front of him would have such a terrifying weapon reserve. Frank, who was completely desperate for the city's laws, decided to avenge his wife and daughter in his own way. After all, with his current ability, the second option is the most suitable for him. With that said, he got up and walked towards the backyard. Merlin stared at Frank for a while, until the other person's expression became a little unnatural, and then he said, "It's my off-duty time now, but for you, I can make an exception for you to work overtime, come with me." Frank stepped into the warehouse, and the first thing he saw was a neat arsenal. Under the incandescent lights, there was a cold atmosphere. "Here." Merlin in front of the warehouse beckoned to him. After seeing the strange sports car vehicles in the back row, I couldn't help being a little surprised. "Okay, then please." But no matter how attractive these weapons and vehicles are, Frank can only be greedy, and his pocket is too shy. Looking at the arsenal equipped with rocket launchers and Gatling heavy machine guns, Frank felt a little numb. Although he didn't have much money, before leaving, Frank still spent all the money to buy a Mk2 sniper rifle, a large number of ordinary bullets, and 3 explosive bullets. And he was amazed by the performance of all kinds of strange weapons. But now he only wants to avenge his family, so he doesn't care too much about it. Looking at his expression, Merlin knew what the other party was thinking, so he didn't say much immediately, but directly raised the armor-piercing pistol and pointed it at the metal bull's eye in the distance. Crack! While he was amazed, Merlin had already taken down a pistol from the shelf on the wall. Frank glanced at the slope magic treasure on the workstation, and then quickly followed. "There are Vulcan machine guns, rocket launchers." Merlin introduced him one by one. "Be a player, play a game." His gaze was on the black t-shirt with a skull printed on the opponent's chest. However, just as the two of them walked to the door, a tightly wrapped mysterious man in red tights and a hood appeared in front of them. "There is also a Mk2 sniper rifle, explosive bullets and armor-piercing bullets made in the last half-month. It is very effective for assassination after adding night vision goggles." Frank squinted his eyes. Daredevil. If it weren't for the young age of the other party, he would have learned a lesson a long time ago. "Generally, I recommend this pistol after the armored skeleton horse is modified in my shop," Merlin said, casually throwing the armor-piercing pistol to him. "If you are short of money, I have a way here." He pondered for a moment, then nodded. "You know me." Frank looked surprised at the young man in overalls with an immature face. After looking around and finding no one else, he finally confirmed that the person in front of him was the owner of the modification shop that Dow said. Bang bang bang. Sparks of words flashed quickly on the steel target. Armor-piercing pistol. The basic ammunition capacity is 36 rounds, and the expansion magazine can reach rounds, supporting bursts. The stability is not much better than micro-flushing. What method? Frank carefully rubbed the Mk2 heavy sniper rifle in his hand, his eyes full of love. "Yes, that's what I said." He clapped his hands firmly. "Playing games." He was stunned for a moment when he heard the words. His first reaction was esports, followed by survival games organized by the rich underground. "Frank, I will send you a game website in 2 days, and then you can just watch the task and accept it. And I am also one of the players. At present, you can be regarded as an NPC merchant who provides weapons in the game." And Frank's eyes widened a little bit. He could see clearly that the opponent's pistol trembled very little when they fired bursts. After the introduction, Merlin seemed to see Frank's difficulty. I want to buy some goods. He said his purpose directly in a low voice. But for a man, seeing this scene is blood boiling. This is very popular. You are lucky. It may be gone in 2 days. A pump-action shotgun with an explosive cartridge, basically a car per shot. After Merlin packed it in a wooden box, he prepared to send him away. Well, the main thing is to ask the other party. Of course I know, you are very famous recently, let me think about what the Taoist said. Merlin pondered for a while, a smart idiot actually wants to use the law to punish those Mexicans and Irish. Pistol, burst. Frank lost interest as soon as the words came out. Just come in with the door open. It's easy to scare people if you stand outside. And when can you change this outfit, it's too ugly. Merlin curled his lips and complained, obviously he had known him for a long time. Who is this guy? Matt didn't care about his complaints, but turned to Frank. Frank, my client, don't mess around, it's up to you when you walk out of the modification shop. Matt was silent for a while, apparently recalling information about Frank's identity. The bikers and the Mexican-Irish group still have some reputation in Hell's Kitchen, so the fact that they were found to be sued in court has also attracted a lot of attention. But it turned out that the group of people who were accused in court spent some money to exploit loopholes in the law and were released. And now, Matt faced Frank, who was carrying the weapon box, and obviously understood something. He opened his mouth, but he didn't know how to comfort him. He was also a lawyer himself, so he could better understand the mood of the client in this case. It's okay, I'll go first. Frank had no intention of asking the other party for help, but wanted to kill all the enemies himself. Matt didn't stop him. When the other party passed by, he suddenly said, maybe you can wait a while, and I can introduce you to a law firm and appeal again. Thank you, but no need. Frank paused and then left the modification shop without hesitation. After the other party left, Matt looked at Merlin in front of him. All right, if the price of the Batmobile in the garage can be reduced, I'd like to buy one. To be honest, he has been obsessed with the Vigilante ever since he touched it, but the price of tens of millions still makes him flinch. Gwen, I thought you went to band rehearsal today. Merlin was a little surprised when he saw the person coming. I'm just curious about what strange thing you made again, and you dare to use it to participate in the college's science and technology exhibition. Gwen tilted her head, then curiously approached the booth behind Merlin, and saw the exhibits inside clearly through the glass. I heard that you have developed some new products. Let me see if there are any affordable ones. It's not good for you to be so appetizing. A gun, well, it looks more like a flare gun. Looking at the somewhat bloated appearance, she guessed. Merlin. Gwen waved and shouted in surprise, then quickly passed through the crowd and arrived at the booth. Soon, her eyes lit up, and she settled on the boy who was talking with a girl wearing glasses at the booth not far away. In the science and technology exhibition area, besides the teacher, there are also many detectives from technology companies. If you are lucky, you may find some interesting inventions. I need it. But even so, many students formed teams and started to sign up. After Matt left, Merlin finally closed the modification shop and rode his Ducati back home. Different from the prom, this opening science and technology exhibition is related to whether they can go to a better university. If the technology exhibits produced are outstanding, even if the grades are not satisfactory, they may be recommended and recruited by some universities. However, these have no effect on the students of Midtown High School. They only pay attention to one thing tonight, and that is the long-prepared college science and technology exhibition. Although he opened a firm, the cases he received did not make much money, and $3,000 was a lot of money for him. To put it bluntly, I just want to have love for free. Therefore, the science and technology exhibition area of the college was extremely lively tonight, and many teams arrived at the exhibition area with their inventions and researches for display. Customer privacy, no comment. Merlin shrugged, then turned and walked towards the workshop. Welcome to come next time. Merlin ignored the other party's reluctance, snatched the beautiful knife from his hand, waved his hand and smiled. Matt. Before the holiday, the school also left some homework for the newly promoted graduating class, which was the science and technology exhibition at the beginning of the school year, which was all voluntary. This is an electromagnetic pulse launcher, which is used for electronic equipment. Merlin next to him pointed to the instructions on the glass. It has everything written on it, so there is no need to guess randomly. The unbridled imagination of students is always something they lack as adults. Today's Merlin's temperament has changed a lot from that in the modification shop. His eyes are moving and he seems to be full of curiosity about everything, giving people a sense of harmlessness. And Merlin rolled his eyes helplessly. This guy often comes to the store like chanting sutras, saying that he should go on the right path, become a superhero's partner, and jointly protect the peace of this city. It's an electromagnetic pulse launcher that can destroy almost all electronic equipment. But if you really want to buy it, I can give you away. Gwen, with short blonde hair, kept looking around on tiptoes among the crowd in the exhibition area, as if looking for something. You are such a little profiteer. You must keep that Batmobile for me. Matt didn't linger much. He was going to fight criminals tonight, so he followed Frank to see if he could help. When they produce and sell it, it may have to wait until the end of the year. Matt took over the electromagnetic pulse launcher like a flare gun and stroked it carefully. I plan to exhibit this at the Science and Technology exhibition after school starts. If there is cooperation from a technology company, pulse bullets should be much cheaper then. Merlin took out a compact pulse launcher and handed it to him and said casually, "Don't think about it, you can't afford it even if I give you a discount." Merlin said bluntly, but his voice changed soon. The next day, Queens, Midtown High. What way? This is a bullet, a total of 6, enough for you to use for a week. So he often comes to the modification shop, but rarely buys anything. Gun, I don't need that. Matt waved the crutch in his hand. However, Merlin didn't pay too much attention to the fact that the other party helped him solve many troublemakers. After the vigilante made it, he really wanted to buy it, but he couldn't even open a law firm due to his lack of money. In the end, the corner of Matt's mouth twitched slightly and took out $3,000 and handed it to Merlin. What did he buy just now? Quote. There is a newly developed gun that sells for $3,000. Hearing this, Matt didn't ask any further questions, but asked about something serious. What's the matter? I'm closing the door. Gwen moved her eyes upwards, looked at the instructions above, and grinned in embarrassment. Let's wait until I get the invitation on Saturday. Do you really not need my newly developed gun? Merlin thought and couldn't explain it for a while, so he changed the subject. An electromagnetic pulse transmitter, perfect for sneaking in to fight criminals. The time has come to September, the hot weather is gradually becoming sultry, and walking on the street makes people feel a little irritated. She raised her head and looked at the girl who had just been talking to Merlin. She is Hannah Musk, we just met. Merlin introduced her. Hello, Gwen. Hannah greeted quietly. Gwen looked at Hannah's cute and quiet face under her red-rimmed glasses, quietly walked up to Merlin, touched him with her shoulder, and asked teasingly, "So you like quiet girls? I thought in your head they're all gasoline gears. If you didn't always let me down, I could also like you." Merlin patted her hard on the back, and then smiled at Hannah as if nothing had happened. Gwen gritted her teeth and stretched out her palm to retaliate, but after thinking about her unskilled strength, she decided not to do it. Just when she wanted to take revenge through her mouth, there was a sudden commotion in the Science and Technology Exhibition Center. It seems that some powerful exhibit has appeared. Merlin moved towards the location of the commotion along with the crowd. However, when they got closer, they found that it was a sturdy student with a short cut who was bullying a thin student with a backpack. Standing beside them were two black and white men with short hair, watching this scene with sneering faces. That guy Fleischer is bullying people again. Gwen frowned when she saw the scene that caused the riot. Okay, it's not an exhibit. That seems to be Peter. Merlin said suddenly, looking at his classmates who were pressed to the ground and struggling. When Gwen heard the words, he immediately looked at it, and seeing that it was really his friend, he was shocked immediately and was about to shoot. Gwen was poised and ready to strike. Do you want to try it? Merlin's face was calm, as if he didn't feel the strange looks around him. You are. Merlin looked at him suspiciously. Fleischer also subconsciously stretched out his hand and took a few steps back, but seeing Merlin holding a toy pistol with spring coils in his hand, he couldn't help but sneered. Some students later found out that the other party was working in a car modification shop and would carry some wrenches and hammers with him. As for Gwen, if nothing else, she is the Spider-Man who has caused a lot of trouble in the Big Apple recently. Gwen next to him was stunned when he saw the pistol in the opponent's hand. The whole body of the pistol was blue, like a plastic material, and the front part was not a traditional boring hole, but a circle of yellow spring coils, more like a radio wave radiation device. Did you do it? He really couldn't imagine how the other party threw 3 strong men away. Are you okay? While Mirren was observing the atomic gun, Merlin pulled Peter up from the ground. Soon, his eyes were on Merlin. What happened? What's the matter? At this moment, the teacher from Weijon walked in through the crowd, and frowned when he saw Fleischer lying on the ground moaning in pain. Well, this time it's really a toy gun. But soon, she, who often stays at home, recognized the pistol in front of her. It seemed to be the weapon in the game that has become popular all over the country recently. She remembered it clearly, and it was still in the online mode. Oh, I'm a technical agent from the R&D department of Stark Industries, Mirren Otero, and this is my business card. Realizing that he was a bit abrupt, Mirren quickly took out a business card from his pocket and handed it to him. Passed. Ziz. The atomic wave ejected, blasting an electric arc in the void. Tennard, who had just walked over, was thrown out instantly like a rag bag, and hit the 2 Fleischers behind. After getting up, Peter nervously opened his backpack and looked at it. After making sure there was nothing wrong, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. Merlin's presence in the school was very low, and he had been bullied before. However, during a fight before the holidays, the other party suddenly took out a wrench and taught the bully a lesson, and not many people were willing to provoke him. But recently, Peter often chases Spider-Man with a camera, and Merlin has been engaged in games and technology since he traveled over. Thank you. Mirren politely thanked him, and then excitedly took the atomic energy gun. Merlin nodded, and was about to explain when a middle-aged man in a suit suddenly came to him excitedly. Fleischer, let go of Peter, this is a science and technology exhibition center, not your football field. As he said that, he took out a strange pistol from his waist and pointed it at them. Merlin took the business card and looked at it. After confirming that there was no problem, he nodded, yes, but this is still a semi-finished product. Try not to touch the coil and trigger. Since I participated in the college's science and technology exhibition this time, I definitely wanted to get the attention of many military technology companies, so I didn't hide it. This gun is still under development, I hope you are all right. Seeing the black men getting closer, Merlin pulled the trigger. With the combination of blue and yellow, and the weird shape, it is no different from an ordinary toy gun. He handed over the atomic energy gun in his hand. Shet, you freak, do you think a toy gun can scare us? Do you think we are idiots? A violent voice suddenly came from Fleischer's ear, followed by his short-haired black companion. He rushed out with anger on his face. The action of drawing a gun startled the surrounding students, but when they saw the toy model pistol drawn by the other party, they immediately showed the expression of an old man, a subway, and a mobile phone. The teacher who originally wanted to inquire about the cause of the incident also slowed down and then asked the students at the scene about the situation. Hey, kid, can you show me the gun in your hand? Looking at the atomic energy gun that has almost nothing to do with the gun except for the handle, he hesitated for a moment. With a ferocious look on his face, the black man Tennard stretched out his hand to grab the gun in the opponent's hand, intending to take it away and throw it to the ground to break, and then teach him a lesson. Boom! A series of falling sounds sounded in the silent exhibition hall. All the students watching seemed to be still, their mouths wide open in surprise, as if they had not yet recovered from the scene just now. He subconsciously wanted to stop it, but he thought it would be good to have someone to help test it out. Boom! Because they are neighbors with the Stacy family, Merlin and Gwen have been friends since childhood. In school, they also met Peter through Gwen. Looking at the other party's confident expression, Fleischer was also a little undecided. But just when his palm was about to touch the toy gun, a strange wave suddenly popped out, and then an unparalleled force hit him. Under the huge impact, the 3 fell directly out of the encirclement. But Merlin spoke first before her. Thank you, I'm fine. Peter, fight back next time you encounter this, otherwise they will just keep bullying you. Gwen said, but looking at the weak friend in front of her, she felt a little helpless. Find some time to learn how to fight. If you need it, I can pass on my trainer to you. Before taking revenge, Merlin also specially found a retired military coach to learn fighting and firearms for a period of time. Listening to what Merlin and Gwen said, Peter tightened the backpack in his hand. Thank you, but don't worry, no one will bully me in the future. He thanked me gratefully, and then said seriously. Gwen thought that the other party was going to follow Merlin's advice to learn fighting, so she couldn't help being happy about it. And Merlin looked at the backpack tightly clutched in the opponent's hand, and frowned. I'll send you the coach's email address later, don't be too impulsive before your strength improves. He warned. Okay, I'm going to the bathroom first. Peter didn't know whether he heard it or not, so he quickly left the hall with his backpack on his back. After Peter left, Gwen looked at Merlin in surprise. You still learned to fight? When did it happen? During the holiday, she either stayed at home, or ran out to hang spider webs on Apple City. She was busy all the time, but she hadn't been with Merlin for a long time. The main reason was that when the two of them were dating, she took the initiative to release pigeons because she was catching criminals, so she was a little embarrassed to face Merlin. After watching the movie alone, Merlin raised his eyebrows. Hey, gentlemen, I have brought exhibits this time. Maybe you are interested in taking a look, he said, pointing in the direction of his exhibition area. This is a miniature electromagnetic pulse transmitter. I believe everyone is familiar with it. Merlin pointed to his exhibit and began to introduce it. That is, the energized coil is compressed by implosion to generate an instantaneous electromagnetic pulse and destroy electronic equipment within the radiation radius. At present, the technology of electromagnetic pulse bombs is not very mature, let alone miniaturization. Shet, Mirren, you can't be such a fool, show us the things quickly. The inside of the pulse bullet is a cylindrical explosive, and the outside is wrapped with a wire. Seeing them pulling on their ties and arguing, Merlin quickly walked up. In comparison, the radiation range of non-nuclear electromagnetic pulse bombs is much smaller. As a landmark university in Queens, Midtown High School has good teaching resources and has trained many outstanding students. The electromagnetic pulse bomb was also inspired by this aspect. The nuclear electromagnetic pulse bomb is more terrifying. This bomb was only detonated in space when Yingzhong and Maoshong were working on the Star Wars project. It's just that they were a step slow and were jumped directly by the people from Stark Industries. But to be more precise, it was a nuclear explosion experiment. In addition to producing a large amount of gamma rays, the nuclear explosion at that time also emitted a powerful electromagnetic pulse. Well, it seems that you have done a lot of amazing things during this time. Under Merlin's guidance, many technology agents came to his booth area. Seeing this scene, other students and teachers also gathered around him curiously. Soon, Merlin's exhibition area was divided into many layers inside and out. Others also handed over their business cards. In recent years, Yingzhong, who loves to make trouble, has also put in a lot of seeds. Let the local residents go back directly to 100 years ago. No, I haven't finished it yet. It is mainly used in scenarios such as car interception and communication destruction. There are two types of electromagnetic pulse bombs, one is nuclear electromagnetic pulse bombs and the other is non-nuclear electromagnetic pulse bombs. During this period, economy and practicality must also be considered, but future development will definitely focus on the extension of electromagnetic pulse weapons. In addition to technical agents from technology companies, there were also some newspaper reporters at the scene. Many technical agents showed interested eyes. Therefore, non-nuclear electromagnetic pulse bombs have only one advantage in war, that is, they have no lethality to personnel. Saturday. I'm sorry, I may be a little busy during this period. Merlin gestured to the side. At some point, people from other technology companies also gathered around, arguing with the technical agents from Stark Industries. What? However, after Eagle Sauce was first put into use, countries also began to take precautions, setting up 3 layers of shielding defenses in the distance. This miniature electromagnetic pulse launcher solves the size problem and also solves the range strike problem. The pulse bullets inside can accurately strike a single target. At that time, 1/3 of the satellites in low Earth orbit were destroyed. The bullet needs to be fully charged first. After it is fired, the columnar gunpowder inside will detonate instantly. Because it occurs from one end of the explosive column, the detonation point will produce a violent detonation wave. As a top student, Gwen of course understood what the technology of these two firearms represented. Although I understand, I can't help but feel a little disappointed. In fact, to be honest, they did not expect such a big surprise to participate in this Midtown High School Science and Technology exhibition. Shock waves are also available. Merlin smiled, and then continued to explain. Just kidding, I'm not angry. The movie looks really good. It would be a pity if I didn't watch it. Instead, it is used for urban vehicle interception and electronic equipment destruction and infiltration with better results. Seeing Merlin, the several detectives who were arguing quickly corrected their attitudes and resumed their professional stance. Of course, in some specific circumstances, it is also easier to destroy network communications. EMP launchers, atomic guns. You're Merlin Shaw, right? I'm from Hammer Industries, and this is my business card. Merlin learned about this aspect from a book published by Dalu. This is a soft kill area attack method, electromagnetic pulse bomb, which is mainly used in future information warfare. Electromagnetic pulse. Everyone is familiar with this, and even went to war. It was used when Bayway beat the South. Gwen. Many laboratories spent hundreds of millions of dollars on technology without any breakthrough, but it was demonstrated here. Then, let's go see another show this Saturday. Gwen tilted her head and invited. The astonishing scene just now was not only seen by the technical agents of Stark Industries, but also technology companies such as Hammer and Osborne. Grounding, shielding, filtering, 3 steps, the electromagnetic pulse will be greatly reduced. The wave surface will propagate to the front at a speed exceeding the sound speed of the medium, and the explosives in the reaction zone behind the wave will detonate continuously under high temperature and pressure. And every science and technology exhibition will have dazzling gizmos, but compared with this time, it is not at the same level at all. The miniature electromagnetic pulse launcher sounds full of futuristic technology, but it is not practical on the battlefield. First, let me talk about the purpose of my research on electromagnetic pulse weapons. This is mainly to facilitate the police's arrest. The straight-line magnetic field formed by the helical wires of the casing detonates the explosive from left to right, and the ruptured casing will cause a short circuit with the coil. During high-speed movement, the magnetic flux in the coil is continuously compressed, and the induced current becomes higher and higher, which will eventually be input into the virtual cathode tube at the end. In the end, a powerful electromagnetic pulse will be formed. The people around looked at the young man talking eloquently on the booth, and they couldn't help being a little surprised. In fact, if you have played the morality and rule of law game, you will quickly recognize it after seeing the pulse gun and the electromagnetic pulse transmitter on the stand. But after all, it is a game, not everyone can play it, even if it is extremely popular in the game industry, not every player can play it, and the computer configuration and the amount of funds must be considered during the period. The electromagnetic pulse launcher has attracted the attention of technical agents from various companies, but it is much less enthusiastic than the atomic energy gun. In comparison, atomic energy guns are a cross-generational research. In the following time, technical agents from various companies gathered around Merlin's booth, so within a short while, his hands were filled with business cards. The team participating in the exhibition area at this time looked at the increasingly empty area around them, and could only temporarily abandon their own exhibition area, and gathered around Merlin's exhibition area with others. At this time, in the men's toilet, Peter sat on the toilet, put his backpack in front of him, unzipped the backpack, and took out a green potion from it. "What the hell? Why are you chasing me?" Merlin looked at the lizard man who was chasing Fleischer, and the others suddenly turned around, feeling a little dazed for a while. Immediately afterwards, a green lizard man whose head was almost on the ceiling suddenly chased out from the corner, exuding a cold and crazy air, and stared at the 3 Fleischers in front of him with icy pupils. Tick-tock, tick-tock, roar. The sound of dripping water accompanied by low roars sounded in the silent toilet. Fleischer and the other 3 came to the toilet at some unknown time, discussing with angry expressions what had just happened. Hiss. Peter's pupils dilated suddenly, and gradually turned into cold vertical pupils, and green horniness was growing on his skin at a speed visible to the naked eye. The light passed through the green potion to form a dense green refraction on his excited and determined face. Ah! The people who stayed in the exhibition hall and hadn't left immediately screamed and ran towards the exit of the exhibition hall. Shut your mouth. Fleischer glared at him, then took out a cigarette and put it in his mouth. Go to your house to barbecue. I don't remember what you have baked. You won't let us be free labor. Gwen looked at him suspiciously. Fack. Fleischer slapped the toilet door next to him heavily, and cursed angrily. Therefore, this holiday, he has been researching cross-species genetic medicine, and finally found the direction from the lizard's gene, and made the super serum he is now holding. In addition, his idol is the superhero Spider-Man, so he also wants to become a superhero and be admired by everyone. Sound. The other two immediately quieted down and listened carefully. And the black tenor showed a trace of hesitation on his face, and then said, maybe it will be a wrench and a hammer or something. Crack. The flame rose, but he seemed to have noticed something, and suddenly froze. In the corridor, the three of Fleischer looked terrified, and ran towards them in a panic, looking back from time to time, as if they had encountered some terrifying pursuit. Although this potion was immature, but thinking of the insult just now, he couldn't wait any longer. After the lizard man came to the hall, for some reason, he suddenly chased him in his direction. Gwen. Merlin came back to his senses and subconsciously called out, only to find that the other party had disappeared at some point. His cold vertical pupils immediately glanced at the people present. The other party has always been like a little transparent in school, and he doesn't know what's going on at home. After seeing Merlin, who was just like him, change from being weak and decadent to becoming more confident and mature, he was also deeply shocked. Help! There are monsters in the school. What's wrong with you? The two companions who were waiting for the fire were a little puzzled when they saw this. I didn't ask you, I asked Hannah. Merlin ignored her teasing and looked at Hannah. Bang! At this moment, the toilet door was suddenly slapped heavily. It's really boring, why not go to the band performance? Gwen and Hannah complained while helping Merlin clean up the booth. Go to my house later, how about asking Peter to have a barbecue supper on the balcony? Merlin put the electromagnetic pulse transmitter into the box and said with a smile. Hannah, who was concentrating on cleaning up, raised her head and saw Gwen and Merlin looking at her. She hesitated for a moment, lifted her hair from her forehead and nodded in agreement. It is good. Fortunately, the technology exhibition is in the final stage, and there are not many people staying in the exhibition hall, so there is no need to worry about a serious stampede. Bang! Suddenly, the toilet door was knocked out, and then a green-skinned lizard man with a size of nearly 3 meters walked out of the toilet slowly. Just when Gwen was about to say something, a terrified cry suddenly sounded in the exhibition hall. Ha! Come on, buddy, you can do it. He took a deep breath, encouraged himself, and then resolutely inserted the syringe into his arm, and the green serum went deep into the muscle fibers along the extracutaneous tissue. During this period, the genetic modification of the cells in the body gradually began. Fleischer turned his head slowly, looked towards the toilet door next to him, and asked softly, you guys, did you hear anything? I don't believe that guy will always have that toy gun on him. The white companion also gritted his teeth and said, obviously looking for an opportunity to take revenge on the other party. The time was getting a little late, and this science and technology exhibition was gradually coming to an end. After taking over the atomic energy gun from the reluctant Mirren, it was almost time to end. Bang! A green claw suddenly clawed at the corner wall, and a dull sound echoed in the corridor. The students and teachers began to leave one after another, and the participating teams also began to put away their exhibits. Gwen reacted instantly, seemed to feel something, and looked solemnly at the location of the hall corridor. The faces of the three of Fleischer suddenly turned pale. Fleischer and the two. Hannah, follow them and leave first. I'll hold you here for a while. Thinking that Gwen must have gone to change clothes when he disappeared, he should be here soon. No, let's go together. Hannah said, suppressing the fear in her heart. I don't know how he targeted me. I don't have time to take care of you. Merlin took out his atomic gun, put his arm around Hannah's shoulders, and said seriously. Just as Hannah was about to speak, Merlin suddenly thought of something and said again, by the way, don't say anything like, take care, when you leave. If you really want to do something, go get the box from my car. Merlin threw her his motorcycle keys to her. Okay. Hannah looked at Merlin worriedly, but also knew that she couldn't help here at all, but would drag him down instead, so she could only tightly hold the key in her hand and head towards the garage. Merlin. With a hoarse and deep voice, the lizard man had already come to Merlin at this moment, and his huge claws grabbed him, but it seemed that he didn't intend to hurt him, but just wanted to capture him. Buzz. But just when the ferocious claws were about to touch, a powerful arc wave suddenly shot out. Under the huge impact, the lizard man's tall body suddenly staggered, and he took a few steps back involuntarily. But just when the lizard man staggered back a few steps and was about to stabilize his figure, 2 spider threads suddenly shot out from behind him and stuck to his shoulders. Putting on a black and white tight-fitting battlesuit, Gwen Spider-Man, who fully displayed Meowman's figure, fell behind at some point, grabbed the spider silk with both hands and pulled it hard. Bang! The lizard man, who was originally out of balance, suddenly lay on the ground sprawled, making a muffled sound. Woohoo! Beautiful cooperation, buddy, you did a good job. Gwen cheered, and gave Merlin a thumbs up on the opposite side through the lizard man lying on the ground. However, at the next moment, his face suddenly changed, and he looked at his arm in panic. What is this? Merlin. Gwen, who was in the air, couldn't help but exclaimed when he saw him rushing straight up. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the first time I've encountered this kind of monster, and I'm a little excited. Gwen patted his head, then stretched out his hands, and the white mucus spider webs shot out one after another, sticking to the lizard man's support. On both paws and feet. I saw that the bullet embedded in his body exploded unexpectedly, and the raging flames started from his arm and quickly spread to his whole body. Under the worried gazes of Gwen and Gwen, the distance between Merlin and the lizard man is getting closer and closer. Even though the size gap between the two is huge, Merlin still has no intention of slowing down, but is getting faster and faster. Roar! He roared, broke away from the spider thread instantly, and then chased Merlin again without looking back. I think you'd better use your spider silk to trap him. Merlin pointed at the lizard man who was struggling to get up. There was a lizard man in the middle. Hannah seemed to have guessed Merlin's thoughts and tacitly threw the box in her hands. However, because the atomic energy gun in his hand is not yet perfect, its power is not very great. After some preparations, the lizard man stretched out his arm to block it, and then continued to walk towards him as if nothing had happened. The bullet embedded in his body was quickly squeezed out, and the injury healed quickly. Roar! He looked up to the sky and roared in pain like a self-immolating giant. And Merlin's bullets just ran out, and just as he was going to get a new clip, the other party suddenly ran towards the toilet with flames all over his body. She grabbed the thick spider silk, her feet firmly pressed against the ground, and she leaned back and tugged with the lizard man. When the lizard man turned around, he faced the dark and hollow muzzle. But when he thought of the ferocious lizard in the mirror just now, he suddenly became sad and crazy. Unboxing, picking up the gun, loading the magazine, pulling the safety, gripping the handle, twisting, tilting the head to aim, a set of actions flowed smoothly. Merlin quickly loaded the magazine, then raised his rifle and chased after him vigilantly. Merlin was also a little speechless. He remembered that he had nothing to do with Peter, and they were even very good friends. Why did he start staring at him after he turned into a lizard man? Gwen also shot out the spider silk from behind, trying to block it, but just like the atomic energy arc wave, it could only be hindered a little, and then it was torn off by a huge force. It's disgusting. Seeing the tentacled lizard with its tail broken, she groaned and got up quickly, shooting a spider web into the sky, sticking to the exhibition ceiling and flying out. He could even feel the stench emanating from the other party's body. Merlin pulled the trigger again, only to find that the energy stored inside had been exhausted. Merlin's eyes lit up when he saw this, and he looked at the lizard man rushing towards him. Without hesitation, he threw the atomic energy gun in his hand aside. Instead of retreating, he rushed forward head-on. Peter looked back at his broken tail, and snorted softly, and a new tail grew out again at a speed visible to the naked eye. Bang! The weapon box thrown by Hannah just landed in his arms. Thinking of Peter's abnormality just now, he probably guessed the identity of the lizard man in front of him. Click, click, click. The muzzle of the Mk2 bullpup rifle sprayed out dazzling fire, and dense bullets roared out. But the next moment, she suddenly lost weight and flew out. A thick green severed tail wrapped in spider silk also landed next to her, and the tip of the tail even wriggled twice. Spider-Man. Peter looked up at Gwen opposite, a trace of longing flashed in his eyes. Gwen, who had just landed, recovered from her astonishment, and hurriedly followed along the ceiling. But I don't know if this blow affected any of his nerves. Instead, it aroused the madness in his heart. He opened his ferocious fangs and roared at Merlin, then rushed towards him like a car. No, no, you can't keep moving forward. Seeing this, Gwen was also a little anxious, her hands danced quickly, and the dense spider webs shot out from her wrists, all concentrated on the opponent's tail. Merlin looked at the giant claw that was getting closer and closer to him, and suddenly he leaned up and knelt down and slid the shovel to avoid it, passing him by. Bang! At this moment, an atomic blast hit his head, causing him to become dazed for a moment. The lizard man looked at Merlin, who was close at hand, and suddenly swung his sharp claws to grab him. But after the dense bullets hit the opponent, they did not cause much damage. It's useless. Peter stretched out his arm to block his weaker eyes, and continued to rush towards Merlin against the impact of dense bullets. Merlin. At this moment, an anxious shout suddenly came from the door, and Hannah returned to the exhibition hall panting and holding a silver box. Merlin watched the running lizard man pull the trigger, and an atomic energy arc light wave was shot out again, heading straight for the opponent's head. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The men's bathroom was in a mess, and the mirror was full of cracks, as if it had been broken by a hard punch. There was silence save for the sound of dripping water and the flickering of electric lights. Merlin raised his rifle and came to a destroyed toilet cubicle. All the wooden boards around it had been destroyed, and some were still charred. The toilet inside has been completely shattered, exposing the sewer opening below. This smell. Merlin stretched out his head and glanced down the cracked hole, and a stench rushed straight into his nasal cavity along the sewer, and he almost couldn't catch his breath. It seems that the person slipped away from the sewer. After confirming that the other party had escaped, he also relaxed, and then looked at Gwen, who was hanging upside down from the ceiling. Are you going to chase? Gwen glanced at the sewer, and cast him a speechless glance. If you are willing to chase, I will follow. Forget it, I'm not a superhero. I thought this taste would be nothing to you. Merlin spread his hands and thought of teasing him. By the way, you just called my name, do you know me? Gwen's body immediately stiffened, and she couldn't help shouting the other person's name just now because of worry. Fortunately, with a mask, the other party couldn't see her expression. That's what your friend calls you. She quickly thought of an excuse, and said nonchalantly, and then she didn't want to get entangled in this topic, and the more she talked, the more flaws she exposed, so she changed the subject. I appreciate your courage, but you are just an ordinary person with only one life, so don't take such risks in the future. She warned in a serious tone. Leave this kind of thing to me. No way, who knows why he keeps staring at me. Merlin was also a little helpless. Gwen was also silent when she heard the words, and she didn't quite understand. Could it be that someone was specially sent to assassinate? She still knew something about Merlin and his father, and even went to look for it after acquiring the ability, but when she went, those gangs had already been wiped out. By the way, help me find my friend. Her name is Gwen. She has short blonde hair. She just ran away in the chaos. No problem. Gwen was very relieved to hear that Merlin hadn't forgotten her. Gwen disappeared into the toilet with a cobweb, and Merlin was about to go home. Hannah. As soon as she walked out of the corner, she saw Hannah walking cautiously along the wall. My God, are you all right? Hannah seemed taken aback by the shout, but she immediately relaxed when she saw Merlin come out safely. It's okay, but the monster still ran away, let's wait for Gwen here. Merlin comforted her. Gwen. By the way, when did Gwen disappear? Is she okay? Hannah remembered Gwen when she heard his reminder. Don't worry, she'll be back in a while. Merlin took Hannah back to the hall with the rifle in his arms, picked up the atomic energy gun that had been thrown away, and put the rifle back into the box for tidying up. Incendiary bullets, like armor-piercing, high-explosive, metal, and hollow bullets, are special bullets. Requires Mk2 firearms to assemble. Hannah, who followed, was still a little confused, but soon, the blonde-haired Gwen found them with joy. Merlin. Hannah. It's great that you are okay. Hannah looked at Merlin suspiciously. wondering how he was sure that Gwen was fine and would find her back. It's really sad, you actually abandoned us at the critical moment, Merlin said, pretending to be sad while holding the weapon box. Ah, this. Gwen, who was still happy at first, was suddenly embarrassed, but soon, she thought of an excuse. No, that's right, I ran with the crowd, and I thought you followed. I found that you two didn't keep up, so I couldn't wait to run back. I'm really sad, because I'm worried that you went out of your way to find it regardless of the danger, and you were still suspected. Gwen turned his back on guests and showed an aggrieved expression. Really? Merlin gave her a weird look, and it was the first time he discovered that the other party's acting skills were so good. Soon, the police car quickly arrived at the school and surrounded the entire venue. Some daring teachers and students did not go far, but watched curiously outside the venue. After the police arrived, they cautiously followed into the venue. Gwen, Merlin. Hearing the familiar voice, Merlin and Gwen also stopped bickering and looked towards the door. George was wearing a body armor and holding a pistol and looked at the two people in surprise. To be honest, when he heard that Gwen and Merlin hadn't come out from the people who fled just now, he thought that something happened to them. Therefore, every time he took a step closer, his heart twitched. Fortunately, the two finally appeared in front of him intact. Dad. Gwen also ran over happily. After confirming that neither of them was injured, George finally felt relieved and then learned about the situation at the scene. Because Gwen was not at the scene at the time, Merlin was the only witness who repelled the monster apart from Spider-Man. Therefore, Gwen and Hannah could leave first, while Merlin was taken away by George. But before leaving, Merlin threw the car keys to the two of them again. As usual, go back and wait for me. He blinked at the two, then opened the car door and sat on George's co-pilot. After such a big thing happened, I'm still in the mood to eat barbecue. Gwen caught the car keys and couldn't help complaining, and then asked Hannah next to her. Are you going? Of course, let's go. I have already told my family that I am safe. Okay, speaking of which, I haven't ridden that guy's big baby yet, and it turned out to be so generous this time. Gwen shook the car keys in her hand and headed out of the school happily. In the past, Merlin's Ducati was not allowed to be touched by others. Manhattan headquarters, interrogation room. George looked at the electromagnetic pulse transmitter in his hand and looked uncertainly at Merlin sitting opposite. This was developed by you. Yes, this is my exhibit today, and the main customers are you. Merlin was not too nervous, and nodded casually. Then this rifle is yours too, Kangaroo's famous. Yes, I changed it a little bit. Merlin didn't bother with the name, and after the modification, the gun was very similar to the Pharmas of the Kangaroo Kingdom, but the prototype before it was changed to Mk2 was the QBZ-95 rifle. You changed the gun yourself. Merlin, what have you been doing these days? After hearing Merlin's confirmation, George frowned, and for the first time felt a little strange to the child he regarded as his own. He was obviously such a well-behaved child before, but since his best friend passed away, everything seems to have changed. Maybe you should pay attention to the electromagnetic pulse transmitter. Merlin did not answer him, but looked at the exhibit box on his right, and then felt helpless. And I'm the hero who repelled the monsters this time, so I have to ask all the questions. How long will you keep me locked up? Gwen and the others are still waiting for me at home. Indeed, not only did Merlin do nothing this time, but he also repelled the monsters that suddenly appeared and protected his classmates. They can all see this in the monitoring. Because the matter of the lizard man monster has a great impact, if it is not handled well, it will easily cause panic. Therefore, as the sheriff, George can't leave for a while, so he can only send someone to send him back home. When they got home, Gwen and Hannah had already set up a grill on the balcony and lit apple charcoal. Merlin, you're finally back, hurry up and cut the meat. The open-air balcony of the apartment is huge, even comparable to some rooftops, so the barbecue grills don't look crowded and dull. Where's Peter? Isn't he here? Although he roughly guessed Peter's situation, Merlin still wanted to confirm. Hearing Merlin's words, Gwen shook her head depressedly. I don't know if it's a cold or a bad mood, anyway, he doesn't plan to come over. It looks like only the three of us can drink. Merlin waved the beer he bought on the way back. Enough. Gwen's eyes lit up. At home, She was tightly controlled by George, and it was basically impossible for her to get contaminated with beer. Merlin went to call Gwen, but to his surprise, the other party was not at home. At this point in time, except for the main city, the streets are basically empty. In this case, it is very dangerous to go home alone. It's indeed disturbing. Hannah looked at Merlin's retreat and patted her hot face, feeling a little lost. All kinds of cramped alleys have a high probability of hiding crimes. As if hearing Merlin's words, Hannah's blushing cheeks turned even redder. According to our investigation, Spider-Man was also there at the time. Why did you declare that you repelled the lizard man? Well, Hannah climbed into the back seat with a somewhat frivolous step, and then hugged Merlin's waist tightly with both hands, almost pressing her whole body against his body. The next day, get out of the way, get out of the way, it is not convenient for him to accept your interview now, we are the right ones. Click. Suddenly, a door opened. Hannah, seeing that there was no response from the back seat for a long time, Merlin turned his head suspiciously, but the next moment, Hannah, who was blushing, came up directly. Here we are, rest early, thanks to your help in today's meeting. Is it because of your close relationship with Sheriff George Stacy? After the barbecue was finished, the three of them sat around the grill and chatted while drinking cool beer while enjoying the night view of the city. See you tomorrow. Merlin smiled and waved, then started the motorcycle and disappeared into the night. Silent approximately equals default. After the end, Gwen cleared the wine, and returned home cautiously, while Merlin was going to send Hannah home. I just don't know if I have ever drilled into a sewer. As soon as Merlin arrived at the destination on his motorcycle, a group of reporters and technology company personnel who had been waiting for a long time surrounded him impatiently. For a long time, Hannah's rapid breathing sounded under the moonlight, and her eyes under the red sockets looked at Merlin, who was close at hand in confusion. Not to mention talking. She would definitely not sit idly by when the lizard men appeared. Last night she probably put on her spider suit and drunkenly swung spider webs over the Big Apple. Merlin was also not polite, and directly turned around and hugged the other person's waist and hugged her in front of him, then hugged her legs, and kissed her face to face while sitting on the motorcycle. Yes, he needs to stay. On the contrary, people from various technology companies were squeezed out by these reporters. We will hold a special press conference later, and everyone is welcome to come for interviews. But usually it was Merlin and Gwen who bickered, while Hannah watched with a smile on her face, interjecting from time to time. After all, these people did not have an appointment, so random interviews like this are also illegal. Grandma, Hannah exclaimed, quickly jumped out of Merlin's arms, and ran over with a blushing face. And only when you come to Merlin, you can secretly drink a little. Come on, come up. Merlin lit the fire, and tilted his head at Hannah, whose cheeks were flushed. Ah ha ha, it seems that I disturbed you. Hannah's grandma looked at her blushing granddaughter and said with a smile. The two of Merlin turned their heads to look, and a silver-haired old lady was squinting her eyes and looking at the two of them, as if she was confirming something. Hello, according to the police report, it was you who fought off the lizard men. Is this true? It's quite predictable. No, we just want to know the specific situation of yesterday, you can't stop us from pursuing the truth. He didn't expect that the other party's drinking capacity was so bad, and he seemed a little dizzy after just one drink. Before Merlin got out of the car, he was surrounded by big and small tubes, and the reporters were also pointing or guiding words in various ways, trying to get bigger explosive points and contradictions. But it is best not to speak at this time, and even so, they can misinterpret it into various meanings and label you with various titles. Fortunately, soon, the principal of Zhongcheng High School pulled in the security guards and calmed down all the reporters for the time being. Merlin felt a little helpless looking at the microphone that was on the verge of his mouth, for fear that the microphone would be stuffed in his mouth as soon as he opened his mouth. He muttered in surprise, then released the clutch and started the locomotive. They just saw that Merlin was still young and could come up with more words, so they were stuck here early in the morning. But speaking of it, Hannah with flushed cheeks looked much cuter under the dim street lights. How did you repel the target lizard man? Buzzing. The sound of exhaust sounded in the silent street, and gradually calmed down. The reporters stopped working immediately. You pull it back and tell us, what else are we going to dig? Except for Manhattan, There are not many other places where there are usually no investigations for drunk driving, and this point is even less. Merlin drove the motorcycle unimpeded all the way, and soon arrived at Hannah's home. Hannah sat in the back seat, feeling the rushing wind by her ears, and under the cold breeze, her dizzy head became much clearer. But the headmaster knew the nature of these reporters, so he didn't indulge them, and let the security guard Malin enter the school, blocking them outside. And people from various technology companies adjusted their collars and walked in. They came to discuss cooperation this time, and by the way, see if they can poach Malin, a high school student. Atomic energy guns have been developed, and there is no need for universities. It is better to directly recruit people into companies for training. Chapter 11. After entering the school, the principal took Merlin directly to the office. Shao, sit down first. The principal's name is Andy Souza, a mixed race, wearing a suit, about 50 years old, with a strong body, looking at Merlin with a kind and gratified expression on his face. Please sit down too. After Merlin sat down, the principal also invited people from other technology companies to sit down. A teacher came in with tea and made a cup for everyone. After the atmosphere calmed down, Principal Andy looked around at everyone present, but he couldn't help being a little surprised when his eyes fell on a middle-aged man in a black suit and glasses with a successful face. Justin Hammer, you actually came here in person. Justin Hammer, president of Hammer Industries, a military technology company known for its pirated and cheap products. Although the reputation is not very good, being able to survive under the pressure of Stark Industries also has certain advantages. And Merlin's first thought when he saw the other party was the fireworks, the ex-wife missile. Of course, he didn't mean to underestimate it. Let them come, mainly because they want to promote the school. It's okay, I'll go to class. Looking at the chattering group of people, Merlin also had a headache, and then ignored their retaining eyes, picked up his backpack and left the office quickly. People in the office were a little dumbfounded when they saw the owner who suddenly left. On the way, Gwen also went with him. Tech companies gather at Midtown High to compete for a student. Gentlemen, be quiet. I think what you are looking for in this matter is my guardian. It is not easy for me to make a decision on this matter. But after the game came out, he rarely researched in this area. As long as Tony Stark is around, Hammer Industries will never be able to turn around. As a technician, I am perfect for a position such as Co-Prosperity Insurance. But I couldn't figure it out right now, so I asked you if you have any research in this area. Yes, after visiting Professor Connor's experiment at Osborne Industries last time, I discovered that the problem may be in the experimental algorithm. George Stacy, Hammer and others showed headaches. They really didn't like to deal with the police, and the other party was also a correctional police chief. This kind of person was the most difficult to get along with. Both Hammer and Stark Industries quarreled in the office, but there were no substantive conditions, only pieces of imaginative pie. Do you know anything about cross-species regenerative genetic experiments? Peter asked suddenly while chatting. With this publicity, the impression of Zhongcheng High School will be even higher. As soon as Merlin returned to class, Gwen in the back seat waved to him happily. Merlin responded with a smile, and then looked at the person who surprised him, Peter Parker. It's okay, it's just a cold. Peter shook his head, and then talked enthusiastically with Merlin. You will only be suppressed by Tony Stark if you go there, and only we, Hammer Industries, are your best stage. This kid is a genius. He deserves my personal visit. As long as he joins my Hammer Industry, I will definitely train him to be better than Tony Stark. The one-day class made Merlin a little drowsy, so he took out his notebook and started writing the Onion website. Unless you wait until games such as Resident Evil or Prototype come out, you will continue to study. Peter, are you okay? Merlin remained calm, just to test why the other party kept chasing him last night. You can send an email, I'll take a look when I get back. Now that he understood clearly, Merlin didn't worry about anything, but looked at Peter thoughtfully. The former Merlin did have some research on biology, and he and Peter got along very well. Merlin, Obadiah obviously also wants to train someone to replace Tony and work for him wholeheartedly. His face was a little pale, as if he had suffered a serious illness, and his eyes lit up after seeing Merlin enter the classroom. But now the other party left without nostalgia. Then why don't you join our Stark Industries and join forces with Tony? The people from Stark Industries couldn't help standing up. High school students are recruited into the company. Our Stark Industries is willing to show the most sincere sincerity. If possible, President Stark can also teach you, so that you will grow faster. Justin Hammer's daughter, Justin Hammer, is also the future Crimson Cloak. In addition to the space transfer ability of the cloak, the other party is also a shrewd businessman and negotiator. Although now Tony Stark is often seen in various entertainment venues, full of gossip news, and dubbed a playboy, etc., but no one underestimates the new military products that Stark Industries releases time and time again. Wisdom. But last night's tech show gave Hammer hope. Our school respects the opinions of students. And he smiled at them. In fact, even if Merlin was tempted, he would stop them. It is also good to let the other party act as a small boss to support a city plot task. Other tech companies have also tried to join the conversation. The platform can be built in about 3 days, and wait until Saturday to recruit a few players to test the waters. As he walked in, a faint smell made him frown subconsciously. At that time, I will give some salary, with myself and Gwen watching, plus my own super physique and self-healing ability, there will not be too many problems. But Merlin didn't fluctuate when he heard the big pie drawn by the other party, and he was thinking about whether he could pull Hammer Industries into the game. Cross-species regeneration gene experiment. Lizard, salamander. Merlin raised his eyebrows and asked uncertainly. In addition, he also wanted to recruit the most important NPC in the game, a mechanic. Merlin secretly complained when he heard this. Based on his understanding of Tony, he didn't seem to be the kind of person who likes to teach others. Merlin is already an adult, and the contract he signed has legal effect, so they also want to draw a big cake in advance to lure him over. They couldn't help but look at the principal. After school, Merlin and Gwen returned home. Looking at the few vegetables left in the refrigerator, they could only go out to the mall to buy some vegetables. Well, he knew why Peter wanted to arrest him last night, probably because he was too smart. But on the way home, a girl with heavy makeup and open clothes on the street stopped him. "Man, do you need any service? As long as $30, let me do whatever you want." The girl winked provocatively at Merlin with a cigarette in her mouth. Merlin stopped and pondered for a while. "Yes, come with me." Gwen behind. Hearing Merlin's promise, not only Gwen, but also the seductively dressed girl opposite was even more confused. She stood on the side of the street and looked at the two young lovers passing by. She just wanted to tease them casually, but she didn't expect that the boy actually agreed. "This is money. My home is up there. Come with me." Merlin took out $30 and handed it to her, who was still a little dazed, and then walked towards Wall's apartment. "Hey, Merlin, do you know what you're doing?" Gwen finally realized when she saw Merlin giving the money, and then anxiously chased after him and asked. She still can't turn her head around now, and she doesn't understand why Merlin would agree to such a thing. "I know, $30 a time is not very expensive." Merlin looked at the anxious Gwen, a smile flashed in his eyes, and he didn't explain. The girl looked at the $30 in her hand, thought of Merlin's handsome and childish face, excitedly licked her lips, and hurriedly followed. It must be that the two young couples quarreled and let themselves pick up a leak. This kind of young boy won't lose money even if he posts upside down. I didn't expect that there would be unexpected gains today. You know. Gwen was a little impatient, looking at Merlin with a flat face. She didn't know what to say for a while. Gwen looked at the smile in Merlin's eyes. How could she not understand that she was being played? He brought a girl home from the street. In the room, the girl wore an apron with a depressed face, and kept complaining in her mouth. "What are you talking about?" Merlin opened the door and revealed the situation in the room. "I'm so stupid. This guy already has a girlfriend. How could he like me? Girl. No one speaks up for me." For some reason, since she gained the spider ability, her research on biological genes has become more and more handy. Mrs. Stacy and Gwen outside the door immediately widened their eyes when they heard what was said inside. "Oh shit, that's too much. The three of us had a barbecue on the balcony yesterday, and left a lot of dishes in the sink that hadn't been washed. She said she could do anything for $30. Come on, handsome boy, I will definitely make you feel comfortable." As soon as she entered the door, the girl squatted down and approached Merlin with watery eyes. All the way back home, Gwen watched Merlin bring the girl into the room, then went back to her own home angrily and slammed the door heavily. "Merlin, open the door." Mrs. Stacy knocked on the door quickly. He didn't object to Merlin's things, but he wanted to have a normal relationship instead of just looking for someone on the street. The hands have been stretched out impatiently. Merlin didn't lie, he did have things to do. But when the girl saw what Merlin wanted her to do, she immediately became numb. There should be some problem with the algorithm. Compared to your little girlfriend, I can pose in any position and I will definitely let you feel the pleasure of ascending to heaven. Gwen slid the mouse, zoomed in on the experimental data, and examined it carefully. "Gwen, what's wrong? Are you so angry?" Mrs. Stacy, who was sitting in the living room, was a little surprised when she saw her daughter slamming the door in angrily. "Is this what people can think about? My God, can't you soak some dish soap in the water? It's hard to clean the edge of the bowl if it sticks to it." Because the decay rate was too fast during the experiment, the success rate of the experiment also decreased rapidly, and then a series of unknown concurrent conditions were triggered. If it's housekeeping, $30 a time is definitely not enough, but if it's just washing dishes, the remuneration is no problem at all. "I know you are very angry at your age. Let me help you calm down first. Of course, as long as it's not very perverted, I can bear it." The girl gave him a seductive look, but she didn't expect that this handsome boy was still an interesting person. Wait a minute, can you really do anything?" Merlin looked at the girl who almost wanted to eat him, and quickly stretched out his hand to stop her. "This time is definitely not enough to soften the solidified stains on the bowl." Mrs. Stacy looked at her daughter's shameful and indignant expression, and seemed to understand something. But soon, her brows frowned. "Listen kid, I know about puberty, but don't ever touch it. What should I do if I get sick?" "Coming. That's good. Yeah, it looks like Peter is involved in the project, and that's what we were talking about this morning." "It makes sense." Mrs. Stacy, although it was different from what she expected, but the fist was hardened. If she wasn't afraid of accidentally killing Merlin, she would definitely let him have a taste of her fists. Seeing the two high school students bickering on the sofa, she complained a few words in her heart, and continued to clean the bowl with a steel wool ball. So, after seeing these experimental data, she quickly found the problem. "Gwen, although it's different from what I expected, it's fine as long as I can get the money." As for why Peter was looking for him, it was because he thought Peter was the future Spider-Man, so during the conversation, he mentioned something related to the calculation of the decay rate of cross-species genetic experiments. "This is a scam. Gwen told me everything." Mrs. Stacy took a deep breath, trying to be as calm as possible. "Bang bang bang. I mean I can do anything. But you asked me to do it." The voice of the girl in the room seemed a bit difficult to express. For some reason, she suddenly thought of the lizard man who appeared in the exhibition center last night. "Merlin, what's wrong with him?" Mrs. Stacy was taken aback when she heard this. Although Merlin was a little withdrawn in her heart, she was also a strong and sensible child. "Okay, pay attention to yourself, let me do this matter next time." She shook her head funny, and then left here. Soon, Merlin opened the door and looked at Mrs. Stacy with a dark complexion in doubt. "Yes, it would be a waste of time to find a housekeeper. I also have things to do. Lizard regeneration gene, isn't this a research project of Professor Connor's?" Stacy mother and daughter. But Gwen stayed and began to denounce Merlin. "Peter sent it to you." Gwen was a little surprised, and then focused on checking the data in the notebook. "So, you came to her just to wash your dishes." Mrs. Stacy couldn't understand Merlin's brain circuit. "Look at this, the experimental algorithm Peter sent me." After the two quarreled for a while, Merlin pulled Gwen over and looked at the email from Peter on the notebook. Compared with herself, Gwen is much better at biological research than herself, and she is also an intern under Professor Connors. "Go and see and you'll know." "What? Oh my God, is it true?" Upon hearing this, Mrs. Stacy sat up in shock. "She said that $30 can do anything, so I just handed it over to her. I think it's best for you to go to Merlin's house to take a look." Gwen folded her hands on her chest and said with a curl of her lips, "It's really unlucky today to meet something like you. Can't you do anything?" Looking at the girl standing in the kitchen angrily cleaning the bowls, Stacy and her daughter were stunned for a moment. After confirming the problem, she skillfully found a pen and paper from Merlin's room and then began to write. Swiss, swiss, swish. The pen tip kept rubbing on the blank notebook, and soon, a series of concise formulas appeared on the paper. After a few corrections, she quickly came to Merlin and took the notebook and began to type it in. Try it some time, this algorithm should work. After making sure that all the dishes were washed, Merlin ignored the girl's resentful eyes and politely sent her out of the house. And Merlin returned home again, and together with Gwen, studied the experimental calculation formula sent by Peter. The main basic formula of the cross-species gene research experiment is R equals 1 plus P caret N 2. Among them, P represents the probability after each success, N is the number of experiments, and the decay rate is the degree to which the probability of success decreases after each trial. And as long as you find a formula that can increase P and reduce N during the experiment, you can reduce the speed of the decay rate. The two discussed for a while, and after confirming that it was almost the same, Merlin sent back the revised formula to Peter. As the sky was getting dark, Merlin made some supper, but just returned to the living room, only to find that Gwen had disappeared. Goodbye again without saying goodbye. He shrugged, not paying much attention to it, since he was used to it anyway. At this moment, live reports sounded in the laptop. For example, for the three gangs this time, if the task is completed, they should be able to obtain an amount ranging from million. Frank pondered for a moment, not yet. Crash. Well, that's right, you are thinking about revenge now, and the gangs here basically have something to do with it, so there is basically no hope of going to jail with legal sanctions. The police followed suit and found Professor Connors from Osborne Industries, but he had resigned and was nowhere to be found. To be more precise, Merlin can give him a more secure plan, so he doesn't have to be impulsive. Okay, so now you can choose whatever you want from the vehicles and weapons in my store. Frank was a little puzzled, but he took out his phone anyway. Merlin sat down on the sofa with supper, and looked at the notebook while eating. What was playing on the screen was the scene of Fort Williamson. Gwen Spider-Man, who was dressed in a black and white spider suit, had just arrived at the scene. They fought together with the lizard men in the densely congested lanes. Okay, let's do it tonight. If necessary, I can also meet you. This dark drama needs light to purify them, and this city needs light too. Frank clicked on the phone button and looked at the many vehicles and weapons, including fighter planes, helicopters, tanks, armored vehicles, etc., and couldn't help being a little startled. Merlin's voice suddenly came from the headset. At this moment, the police identified Professor Connors as a major suspect and started a purposeful search. Click on it. Turn on the phone. He originally wanted to pick the scorching one, but maybe because the exterior painting was a little conspicuous, he chose the relatively simple sloped magic treasure. The surface is covered with a non-masking princess bubblegum paint. All he wanted was to kill all the gang members who killed his wife and daughter and leave none behind, and before that, he didn't want to die. Saturday afternoon, Merlin tuning shop. The world seems to be in chaos. When he saw what was displayed on the page, his eyes couldn't help but flicker. The lizard monster appeared on the Williamsonburg Bridge again. Now the police are rushing to it, but the lanes on the bridge are crowded and there are many people. The situation is not optimistic. It is still the same station, but the original sloping magic treasure is gone, replaced by a low-lying sports car. The front part of the body looks like a three-pronged toe, and the streamlined beauty of the body is full of futuristic sense of technology. Okay, I promise, as long as you can kill them all, it's okay to give you all the rewards. He didn't care much about the rewards, as long as he could kill the enemy. Thinking of this, Merlin quickly finished his late-night snack, then turned away the news screen and continued to write his own Rockstar website. When Merlin asked, the other person just used skateboarding as an excuse. Afterwards, he chose the slope magic treasure that Merlin had just made last week, and drove away from the modification shop. How does the gun work? Merlin asked first. With the death of the leader of the motorcycle gang, the other two gangs also became vigilant. To be on the safe side, he did not act impulsively, but waited for news from Merlin. But Merlin looked at it for a while, and suddenly realized that something was wrong. The lizard man in the picture seemed to be different from Peter's. Because there are not many things in his mobile phone, so he saw it at first sight. And if you want to buy, in addition to cash, you can also earn corresponding rewards by doing tasks. City Lights, how about this name? Frank then re-enters the arsenal with Merlin. Picked out a pump-action shotgun, a dagger, and an armor-piercing pistol. Another lizard man. He frowned, a little surprised. It's the Rockstar Mall inside. I believe you can see the products inside. The things in my store are also included. Frank drove the vehicle on the dark street, heading in the direction of the motorcycle gang. Frank was silent for a moment, then nodded. Very good, tell me how to join the game. How is it? Or do you plan to finish it yourself? Merlin urged after seeing that the other party hadn't answered for a long time. And I can send you the precise location of everyone in the gang, including the leader. And a major event happened in Hell's Kitchen. The leader of the motorcycle gang was assassinated. I heard that there was an explosion on the spot, and the whole room was covered with minced meat and blood. It was extremely miserable. The appearance of the lizard man made Apple City panic, but since Williamsonburg jumped into the river and escaped from Spider-Man, there has been no trace for a long time. Oh my God, that's great, the kid is fine, it's Spider-Man here. Hell's Kitchen, 38th Street, Fall. I can also provide you with weapons and plans, but a 20.00% fee will be charged. How? Merlin stretched out 2 fingers. This is a headset, ready to receive information. Speaking of which, after avenging your wife and daughter, do you have any plans for the next step? But as the screen lit up, a strange app with a star icon appeared on his phone. The rolling shutter door slowly rose, and Frank, who exuded a dull aura, walked in. Who is behind this game? But nothing came of it until Saturday, and instead Gwen was seeing a few scrapes and bruises from time to time. If it weren't for the 4 wheels, the whole would look more like a future aircraft. Frank did as he did, and as the app was opened, a web page appeared on the phone screen. Frank came back to his senses and adjusted his mentality. But to be really chaotic, we have to wait for the high-profile announcement from Stark Industries. Frank was a little moved, but he really didn't dare to compliment the name, it was a bit too second-guess. Just as he was about to speak, Merlin suddenly issued a warning. The target is ahead of you. Buzz. The dense exhaust sound of motorcycles resounded in the dark streets. Under the dim street lights, a group of gang members wearing colorful headscarves and looking indulgent and arrogant rode motorcycles to occupy the streets and run rampant. Luckily, the motorcycle gangs came out to bomb the streets. I'm already looking forward to them being shoveled into the sky. Hearing this, Frank tightened his hands holding the steering wheel, stared sternly ahead, and accelerated the accelerator. The inclined Rubik's Cube is like a dilapidated ghost that shuttles under the streetlights, galloping away in the direction given by Merlin. In the Merlin modification shop, Merlin was eating snacks while watching the monitoring screen of the scene. The traffic composed of motorcycles was carrying the members of the motorcycle gang who were talking and laughing on the street. Changing faces and continuing, we soon came to an empty square. A woman with a graceful and capable figure wearing blue casual clothes was surrounded by members of a motorcycle gang, but she faced the constant surroundings. She just frowned as she heard the sound of motorcycles and whistles, but she didn't show too much panic. Upon seeing this, Merlin retrieved the woman's identity by reading the other person's face. Soon, a detailed information page popped up. What a coincidence! After looking at the information on the page, he was a little surprised. There's one behind the pillar at 3 o'clock and 2 behind the herb box. Blood spread quietly to the surroundings along with his head. Boom. Remember to last hits. Next are the Mexican and Irish people. Their firepower is much stronger, so be careful. The next moment, a bucket-like vehicle suddenly broke into the circular traffic flow surrounded by motorcycle gangs like a bulldozer. Suddenly, a burst of people turned their backs, and the motorcycle and people were shoveled into the air by the powerful impact and fell freely. People who often sell herbal medicines and smuggle are much more vigilant, and the difficulty also increases. Wearing a black turban, the strong black man was driving a motorcycle in the dark alleys, and the stench of garbage did not affect him in the slightest. However, Bullseye would often tell him about Erica. Although Merlin had never met her, he generally knew something about her. She thinks it's better to pay attention. Just as she was about to take the lead to break the deadlock, a strange roar suddenly sounded outside the court. Frank lowered the speed of the car a little. There's one behind the door on the right. Slow down your speed. That guy can't ride fast in the alley. If you go early, it's easy for him to turn back. Sitting on the motorcycle, he looked back nervously from time to time. When he saw that no one was catching up, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. There's a troll at the stairs on the 3rd floor, throw a mine. Generally, it is the bullseye that Jin Bing contacts with him, but Erica is mysterious and rarely seen. Frank looked at the members of the motorcycle gang who disappeared into the alley on a motorcycle with cold eyes, and then simply followed Merlin's instructions and turned the steering wheel to the right. The next moment, a corpse slipped out. The motorcycle was driving in a narrow alley, and he was familiar with the surrounding area, so he quickly arrived at the exit. Just throw it away. That woman is not a weak person. Don't worry about her. Merlin's words sounded again at this time. After hearing the words, Frank calmed down, raised his pistol and stabbed the black man's head in a pool of blood, then followed the instructions and headed to the next destination. Bang! Under the impact of the inclined plane, the motorcycle and the person were separated instantly along the inclined plane, flew into the air together, and then fell heavily to the ground like a rag bag. The black man's limbs also rolled down like rag dolls and became fragmented. A few sections. Turn right, then turn right again after 500 meters. Frank did not respond, but stopped the car and looked at the black man lying in a pool of blood with a somewhat shocked look, gaining a deeper understanding of the young man Merlin. Bang, bang, bang. Frank drove the sloped magic weapon to tear open a hole, and then started to shovel out from the inside to the outside. The motorcycle gang who had just formed a circle arrogantly, the members floated up one after another like leaves on their motorcycles. At some point, a familiar modified vehicle from the side suddenly crashed into him. Erica, who put on a red silk scarf mask and put on a smart outfit, appeared at the scene. She narrowed her eyes at the dead black man, then looked angrily at the place where Frank disappeared, and chased after him again. Woohoo, just right, Merlin cheered in front of the screen and said excitedly. The dense roar of motorcycles and the provocative whistles of gang members filled the entire square. Under the pressure of this play, most people would have collapsed long ago. With a happy face, Frank took out a bunch of grenades to kill the people at the scene at once, and then went to chase the lucky few who escaped on the periphery, but he couldn't help hesitating when he saw the woman in the center. I won, and I won't be polite. Soon, the square that was originally full of cheers and roars was left in a mess, with motorcycles and people all over the ground, cars crushing people, people crushing cars, all wailing. The moment he left the oppressive and dark alley, the black man's hanging heart finally relaxed. Frank spat at the door in front of him. Erica Nakis, the daughter of a Greek diplomat, Matt's ex-girlfriend, and now the #1 killer of Jin Bin, a powerhouse in the basement of Apple City. But the next moment he relaxed, he seemed to see something, and his eyes widened in horror. Buzz! The inclined plane magic treasure rushed out of the scene like a sharp sword in an instant. Boom! Fake! Who is targeting us? Our motorcycle gang will make you look good when we go back. At this time, he didn't know that all his companions in the square had been wiped out by the gang, and he still wanted to take revenge and go back. Frank was still a little hesitant, but the moment he looked at Erica, this hesitation disappeared instantly, and he threw out the string of grenades in his hand without hesitation. She squinted her eyes and looked around. Although she didn't think highly of these people, it was still a bit troublesome to be surrounded. Seeing the jingling grenades scattered all over the ground, Erica's complexion changed, she cursed in a low voice, and then quickly disappeared into the darkness like a ninja. But Erica is obviously not among them. Boom boom boom. Accompanied by bursts of roars, fireballs soaring into the sky rose one after another in the empty square. Cherno jumped out of the window and is now in a black Cherokee SUV. Along the way, with the help of Merlin's reporting points and the powerful explosive power of the pump-action shotgun, Frank entered the land of no one, and there was no enemy. After a raid, Frank felt like a manipulated game character. After walking out of these gang lairs, he was not even injured. How to call if there is a hang-up? After all, Merlin's existence is equivalent to a clairvoyant. He is also an elite member of the Marine Corps. It would really be unreasonable if he was still injured. This is a suburb of Hell's Kitchen, home to the core of the Mexican-Irish gang. To wipe out all the gangs is to kill all the core members. The other non-staff members will be disbanded if they lose the support of the gang. If we really want to destroy them together, there are countless gang members and they are scattered in various places. Even if they are found, it will take a lot of time to travel. He was walking towards Avenue 36. According to the predicted route, the destination should be the Brooklyn police station. You'd better deal with them before they arrive at the police station. I don't want to be on a second mission. Merlin's urging words sounded in the headset. Frank stared at the words, raised his hand and shot the gang deputy who was still breathing, and then jumped directly from the window, and jumped along the window to the first floor in a few breaths. After getting in the car, he quickly started the engine and quickly followed Merlin's planned route to catch up. Changing the road, this way, when you chase after him, the targets are all at the police station. Merlin couldn't help frowning after calculating the distance between the two sides, then opened the map of Apple City and began to replan the road. As the mission accomplished, he asked, "If there is no way to escape, I can pick you up, but I will charge another of the share." But he, who had his revenge, just wanted to find a quiet place at this time, and didn't ask what the 4-star and 5-star meant. Although it is not as prosperous as Manhattan, ethnic urban areas are prevalent and the collision of various cultures is also very lively. I checked. The police behind have colluded with racial gangs in various areas. Don't worry about hurting innocent people. How about it? Paying the sheriff of Brooklyn a little money a month for nothing, way more money than you can make in herb-filled Mexico. Frank drove the inclined plane monster quickly into the ring road, and of course it attracted the attention of many people along the way. Although it was late now, there were still many vehicles on the streets of Brooklyn. Fortunately, he arrived at the police station after crossing this cross street, and he felt a little more at ease. "Shiete, can you hurry up?" Looking at the slow-moving vehicle ahead, he honked his horn angrily. But today, he did not expect that the idiot who brought him to court broke into his lair single-handedly, and killed his subordinates one after another like a god of death. Boom. Frank could clearly hear the excitement in the other person's tone through the headset, and he seemed to be looking forward to making a big fuss. After confirming the route, Merlin didn't hesitate too much. After shrinking the window of the map, he entered the initial terminal to enter the code. Well, it's such a pity. Merlin on the other side obviously understood what he meant and couldn't help but feel a little regretful. Soon, Frank encountered the first traffic light intersection, and he could see the red warning light from a long distance. The initial 20.00%, plus the 30.00% of the bet, Merlin can get a total almost half of it. Oh, my God, the back is blown up. The driver in front was taken aback, and quickly left the place of the explosion regardless of the traffic lights. The car owner with ink in front was also dumbfounded. "It looks like we are still going to get in." Inside the car, a familiar man pointed a shotgun at him. Okay, Frank had seen Merlin's abilities before and agreed without any hesitation. Shalier's face suddenly became terrified, and he subconsciously knocked on the car door, wanting to get out of the car. The inclined demonic treasure drove past them in a swaggering manner. What the hell? Just as he was about to step on the accelerator and rush over, a modified car that was about as tall as his off-road vehicle turned right and merged into the lane next to him. Especially the red lights along the way, as if deliberately against him, made him feel even more irritable. Woo! The piercing siren sounded in the streets of the city, and one after another police cars quickly chased towards Frank. However, this move seemed to anger the people in front, and the vehicle that was about to start suddenly stopped. On the street, a black off-road vehicle exploded on the spot, and Salil inside was also killed in the flames. Cheryl Alves is a Mexican. Of course, his main business is selling herbal medicine in his old business, and he surrounded a group of Mexicans in Hell's Kitchen to form a gang, mainly working with the Irish. Brooklyn. Ding. The red light turned green, and the vehicle ahead slowly started to move forward. But it was too late. Frank had already pulled the trigger, and the explosive bullets roared out. Fake. Shali suddenly slapped the horn with gritted teeth, and the harsh whistle began to chant under the night sky. But the next moment, something happened that dumbfounded him. The indicator light on the opposite side that originally jumped to green suddenly jumped back to red. Fake. It's really a waste of money to raise them, it's useless at all. When he thought that his entire business was destroyed because of one person, he couldn't help but patted the steering wheel angrily. Boom. Frank retracted the shotgun, and the vengeance was avenged. The blazing off-road vehicle made him feel a moment of exhilaration. However, thinking of Merlin's instructions, Frank did not slow down and continued to run as fast as possible. Ding! The red warning light suddenly jumped and quickly turned into a green light, just as Frank's car turned into a phantom and sped past. Don't let go of the accelerator when you see a red light on the road, just go straight ahead. As long as you escape the pursuit of the police, the mission is accomplished. For the rest of the journey, Frank drove the inclined magic treasure all the way through the green light, even after getting off the ring road and arriving in the urban area. By the way, you are now a 4-star. In fact, it is not bad to be a 5-star good citizen. The first one to unlock will have a mysterious reward. The response speed of these police officers is quite fast. Do you plan to surrender or become the light of the city? Merlin's words rang out again. During this period, some drivers who couldn't wait for the green light suddenly discovered that the green light only turned on for a moment, and then returned to the red light again, as if they were playing a trick on them. Many people took out their mobile phones and took pictures curiously. There is an intersection after 1 kilometer. Turn left directly and take the ring road. Okay. Frank adjusted his breathing, watched the police car chasing behind him, and sped up his speed. However, Frank soon looked at the helicopter hovering in the night sky above, and his expression became serious. Something is wrong. Merlin, what happened? Why did you suddenly increase the police force so much? Thinking of Merlin's ability, he couldn't help but wonder if it was arranged by the other party. Let me see. Merlin was also a little surprised. Although Frank has 4 stars now, there is still no need to touch the helicopter in the real world. He easily hacked into the police system, and soon found out the reason. It's been discovered that you killed 3 gangs. Inspector Colin, who lost his money bag, is furious and will definitely arrest you. After finding out the reason, Merlin said with a chuckle. Your situation is not very good now. Even though Frank is very powerful in combat, he has not yet reached the ability to escape from the human category. It is still not enough to face the siege of a large number of police. Unless you can get to the maze-like community to play hide and seek. But he was now on the street in the central area of Franklin District. If it were just on the ground, there wouldn't be much of a problem, but with the helicopter detection from above, it would be extremely difficult for him to escape the police chasing behind him. The streets ahead must have been lined with barriers and police officers. Woo! At this moment, a few police cars suddenly appeared at the corner of the street ahead, and they came to intercept Frank in an American style. Call out, that's good, it saves me the trouble of catching you. They lined up in a row, looking at the hunt on the street with a leisurely look. To be honest, this guy's execution ability is really strong. He actually restored a sloped magic weapon 1-to-1 according to the game. They even have the urge to strive to be good citizens. Frank raised his hands and looked around. He wasn't too nervous, but rather curious about how Merlin would appear. Frank quickly crossed the street and arrived at the gate of the police station. Frank didn't answer, but continued to drive silently on the driveway, with helicopters circling in the sky, police cars chasing him one after another, and he didn't know how many interceptions were waiting for him in front. And this scene was clearly seen by Colin in the helicopter above. Although it is said that % of the share will be distributed again, but this time for help, it is a favor owed to the other party. Frank's eyes were condensed, and then he slammed the accelerator, and drove the inclined magic treasure straight to the past. Are you really surrendering? Colin on the helicopter was also dumbfounded. Okay, how are you going to pick me up? In the end, Frank looked at the digital display on the gas gauge, and planned to ask Merlin for help. But the police helicopter was still hovering over him, with bright searchlights following him everywhere. As we all know, the Scram is a flying vehicle. How is it? Do you want me to pick you up? Merlin's words sounded from the headset again. Arriving firefighters had been notified in advance and took shelter on the side of the street. Boom. At the same time, it is also equipped with deadlock missiles, atomic energy injection, pneumatic bounce and other devices. Even if you know that there will be more police intercepting ahead, there is no need to turn back and surrender directly, right? Or do you want to take another path? Thoughts flashed through his mind, but the helicopter's searchlight still followed the other party. As soon as the words fell, there was a whistling sound, and then a pink phantom burst into the police's encirclement with jets of energy and reached above his head. Catch it! At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the headset. Hearing the approaching sirens outside, many police officers in the police station were also a little confused. Could it be that they were caught? Frank stopped the car, looked at the many policemen coming out of the police station, looked back at the police car that was chasing him, and looked up at the helicopter circling above. I also want to solder one myself, but I don't have the time or the patience. Only the scorched frame of the vehicle that exploded was left, and it was scattered among the city streets braving repeated gunpowder smoke. Is the person who wiped out his 3 money bags really a fool? Or is it that you have already taken revenge and have no more nostalgia? He prefers the latter. The fire brigade and the police have always been at odds with each other, so at this time, they are actually eating melons with great interest. However, correspondingly, in order to facilitate aerodynamic bounce takeoff, the body needs to be much lighter and not very durable. Looking at the rows of sports cars in the garage in the backyard, he was a little tangled. Watching the sloping magic weapon whizzing past, it shoveled away a police car, and then continued to speed recklessly on the street. The police cars behind them continued to pursue with their lights flashing. The super burning appearance in front of me is painted with 2-dimensional paintings of Princess Bubblegum, holding a long knife in her hand, with an open chest, bold and plump. The car flipped over, and Merlin, who was sitting in the driver's seat, turned upside down and stretched out his hand to him below. The police car intercepted in front was shoveled out on the spot, and Frank also walked away. He didn't care too much about the cost of sharing, otherwise he would have asked for help a long time ago. No, this is where it is, at most 3 stars. Looking at the sloped magic treasure below that was running around like ants on the street, a fierce look flashed in his eyes. Bang bang bang. The bullets whizzed past the ear, and Frank and the police car chased after each other, unknowingly returning to the original place. Let's circle back to the police station door. I'll wait for you there. After Merlin finished speaking, he put down the snacks in his hand and quickly left the lounge and came to the garage at the back. I also like to forklift in Los Santos with the slope mob, but I didn't expect it to happen in reality. Boom. At this time, he was already surrounded, and he walked in on his own initiative. In any case, this guy caused him to lose so many spare money bags, even if he surrendered himself, he must not keep them. The game reflects reality. This guy should have 5 stars, right? It's better to be this one. For the first time on the stage, it would be a pity not to drive the scram, which is the most efficient. What are you talking about? What game? It is difficult to escape pursuit in streets lined with buildings. What happened? Did you run the wrong way? Seeing the other party suddenly turning back, he was also a little confused. In the end, he left the garage and came to his workstation. Moreover, the cars and plots in the game appear in front of your eyes. Anyone who has played morality and the rule of law will feel that this scene is too magical. Frank, who held his hands high, subconsciously grabbed the opponent's wrist, and felt a huge sense of weightlessness the next moment, and was taken away. Frank turned back at a crossroad according to Merlin's instructions. Which one should you choose? He focused his eyes on the vigilante who had already loaded the rocket engine and thought for a while. Police in Brooklyn. The police officers surrounding Frank were dumbfounded. They only saw a pink phantom suddenly pass by, and then the target disappeared in front of them. However, Colin sitting on the helicopter could clearly see that a pink-painted sports car that suddenly took off suddenly ejected, and then rushed out like a rocket, and even made a smooth roll on the way. Soon, the policemen who came back to their senses looked in the air, and saw a pink-painted sports car floating like a fallen leaf among the streets of buildings. The moment the car body returned to normal, Frank was just thrown into the passenger seat. The main driver is a mysterious man wearing a black robe, a sharp-mouthed mask like the beak of a plague doctor from the last century, and a black original appearance. Remember to wear your seat belt. If you get thrown off, I won't care about you. Merlin's eyes were full of excitement as he felt the howling wind and the buildings passing by quickly. In the past, these could only be played in the game, but this was the first time for him in reality. Frank thought of the car that the other party had just reversed, and quickly pulled up the seat belt from the side to fix himself. What are you doing? After he calmed down, he looked at Merlin's current attire in confusion. How about the new skin, the cosplay-plagued doctor. Is it full of mystery? Frank was speechless. Now he can be sure, this guy is really two-dimensional. The paint job of the car is a pink nude two-dimensional, and the previous conversation also revealed a kind of secondary, and now the cosplay is all done. And for those who are often stuck in traffic, there is only envy left in their eyes. The car suddenly catapulted into the air. If Manhattan is the most prosperous area, then Brooklyn is the urban area with the largest population. However, apart from the Brooklyn Bridge, there are no representative buildings and towers in the urban area. Even Frank, who believed in Merlin, felt a little guilty. This scene was completely about to commit suicide. He gritted his teeth, his eyes widened, and he stared closely at the building that was getting closer and closer. Under the towering behemoth, the breath of death hanging over his head became more and more intense. Bang! Merlin landed on an empty street in his scooter, then stepped on the accelerator and galloped on the street. Boom! The light car once again turned into a pink sharp arrow perpendicular to the ground, sticking to the glass barrier of the commercial building, as if driving on the road, straight into the sky. The moment the wheels touched the relatively hard steel frame, he pressed the injection button on the steering wheel without hesitation. Puff! Just when Frank was about to accept his death, a sound of air suddenly sounded from under the car. Sit still. Merlin grinned excitedly under the mask, and suddenly turned the steering wheel. The pneumatic device changed accordingly, and the scooter, which was originally gliding above the traffic flow, spun like a spinning top. Seeing that it was getting closer and closer to the World Trade Center, the car still didn't have the slightest intention to slow down, and it looked like death was at home. Sit still. With a plan in mind, Merlin quickened his speed. At this moment, he didn't want to talk at all, as if he had been thrown into the washing machine just now. His head was still a little dazed. When did you develop the flying car? I'm almost stuck here. As the speed of the car gradually slowed down, Merlin's dignified expression also eased. Looking at the glass road ahead and the night sky at the end, it was a success. Realizing this, he cheered with excitement. And juggling in the sky, the super burning flying like a pink top has also attracted the attention of pedestrians on the street and people in the car. Of course, Merlin knew it too. After turning right at the three-way intersection, he looked around his surroundings. Immediately afterwards, a familiar sense of weightlessness came, and the surrounding scenery dropped rapidly. The car in midair began to fall under the influence of gravity. When it was about to land, the atomic energy engine was fully charged again. I must be so obsessed with giving him love recently, I'm hallucinating. Air superiority is a bummer. Frank. Buzz buzz. At this time, Colin reacted and immediately asked the helicopter pilot to follow him. The duck that had reached its mouth actually wanted to run away. Fake. There are accomplices. Hurry up and catch up. Boom. The super burning butt suddenly ejected blue-purple energy. Under the powerful reaction force, the car that was originally floating like a fallen leaf instantly turned into a sharp arrow that took off its string, and a pink line was drawn above the traffic flow. Phantom. Frank. Dad, look, speeding car. Coming. Merlin stared intently at the building that was getting closer and closer in front of him, and began to control the aerodynamic jet in front, raising the front of the car, and the chassis gradually became parallel to the glass wall of the building. When Frank heard his words, his heart skipped a beat. From the moment he drove to rescue him to now, he finally realized that this guy was not only two-dimensional, but also a lunatic. My stomach was also boiling a little. Frank, who was sitting in the passenger seat, also felt a strong push on his back at this moment. They just escaped from the encirclement just now, but they are still far from being chased by the police. However, there are also many commercial buildings in the central area. Frank resisted the dizziness in his head, squinted his eyes and looked up at the helicopter circling above. Buzzing. Along with the sound of the helicopter propeller, a huge beam of light enveloped them. At this distance, at the current speed, even if you slow down and brake, you can't escape the end of death. In the end, he still grabbed the edge of the car door, and he felt a little more at ease. Pink. It must be my favorite princess bubblegum painting. You're just pure color. It seems that I have been in the army for too long, and I can't keep up with the development outside. What are you going to do? He glanced around, but there was nothing to grab in the convertible. Ahaha, did you see it? We succeeded. As he drove, Merlin's sight quickly set on a World Trade Center building in front of him. "How do you feel?" he cheered and asked Frank beside him. Looking at the smooth glass exterior of the building, his eyes lit up. "What's that? Oh my God, a car flying through the sky. Woohoo!" Under his control, the super flame was like a leaf blowing in the wind, slowly sticking to the glass wall of the building. In the traffic flow, many people got out of the car curiously, and took out their mobile phones to take pictures of the vehicles passing by them. Merlin didn't speak, and drove the Scram straight to the World Trade Center in front of him. "It can't go on like this, the helicopter in the sky must be dealt with," he said in a deep voice. "Oh, God man, that's absolutely Scram." The first time he played it, he recognized the super gas flying above the traffic. Those who had never played it before thought it was some new concept car and could not stop being amazed and envious. The firefighters who were just about to continue cleaning up the wreckage looked blankly at the pink phantom passing above their heads. And the loud siren sounded in the distance, getting closer and closer. Frank, who was tense beside him, also suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. Turning his head to look at the crazy boy in the driver's seat, he decided that this was the last cooperation. The smog in Apple City is too serious. Otherwise, you can see the gorgeous starry sky, which would be more perfect. Merlin, who recovered from his excitement, complained regretfully. "You still want to go to heaven? To the sky? We are going to the sky now." Merlin curled his lips. As the impact of the jet was offset by gravity, the speed of the car slowly slowed down, and there were signs that it was about to fall off the glass wall. However, the charging of the atomic engine had been completed at this time, and he pressed the button again. Boom! Frank and Merlin leaned back, their backs pressed against the seats. The super ignition erupted again, soaring into the sky, speeding towards the top of the building. "Oh thanks. Are these people juggling with me?" On the helicopter, Colin stared at the pink sports car running vertically on the glass wall, his expression blank. "Catch up. Shoot them down." Barclays Center, exit. Tony Stark had just attended a banquet and was hugging a hot singer, surrounded by bodyguards and preparing to leave in a car. The bodyguard Happy glanced at the reporter's appearance. He had blonde wavy hair and was wearing a slim business attire. The white shirt was ready to stand out against the evil, and his face revealed intellectual beauty. "You have a good figure," Stark repeated frankly. "Mr. Stark, what do you think of the nicknames Merchant of Death and Arms Criminal? Although there is no threat from the police on the ground, at a height of several hundred meters, if it is shot down, it will basically be a life or death situation." After 3 atomic engine injections, the super burning carried Merlin to the top of the building. "Mr. Stark, please stay. Tonight was more exciting than his whole life." The cold wind howled, hitting the faces of the two like knives. Everyone around took out their mobile phones and watched this scene in amazement. "Nice figure," he reported in a low voice. Under the reflection of the bright and clear full moon, the super burning vehicle that flew out of the top of the building seemed to be slowed down, and turned in weightlessness. "I've been waiting for you for more than 3 hours." Drip drip. Papa. The glass shattered on the spot, turning into a pile of fragments and falling down. Okay, what do you want to ask?" Stark's brows twitched and he quickly reached out his hand and asked. "I save countless people every year and save countless people from famine, and... Hey, what are you taking pictures of?" He, who often served in the army, immediately recognized that it was the electronic sound of radar locking. "It's really great. I hope you're not just here for fun." Frank gritted his teeth looking at the huge full moon in the night sky. Da. The moment the car shifted its direction, rifle bullets whizzed past them and hit the glass. However, what happened next made their hearts tremble suddenly. Stark tilted his head a little angrily, and then turned his head curiously. "I want to see what is more attractive than me." "Excellent." Stark, who was about to get in the car, suddenly became interested. "There is a magic show. Why didn't you receive any notification? Who is the magician above and he can actually get the police to cooperate?" "I'm Christine, a reporter from Famous Field magazine. Can I interview you with a few questions?" Merlin did not speak, but suddenly turned the steering wheel. The car suddenly veered off course as if it were on a flat road. "Oh, my God, is there a magic show tonight?" But when he turned around and looked up to see the scene of the building, he couldn't help taking off his glasses, staring at a certain part of the building with wide eyes. Puff! A missile with a white tail, like a smart elf, drew a white line in the night sky, and rushed straight to the helicopter in front of it. Confronting each other in the night sky at this moment is really a bit of a fantasy. The two of Merlin could even see Colin with a stern face on the helicopter. Of course not, let's watch it next. After enjoying the feeling of stagnation at high altitude, Merlin immediately controlled the pneumatic device, raised his butt, and let the scram flip in midair. The police helicopter has also arrived at their side, and the police officers in the warehouse have reached the hatch, holding rifles and starting to aim. You'll know soon. Merlin looked at the end of the nearby building and pressed the atomic engine button again. The police helicopter hovered over the building, and its bright searchlights were like spotlights on a stage, perfectly displaying the pink sports car speeding on the glass wall of the building in front of everyone. Oh, boss, look behind. Happy reminded. Frank, who was holding on to the edge of the car door, suddenly heard an electronic siren. The car, which was originally facing the helicopter with its back, gradually changed to the front. But when he put his arm around the lady's waist and was about to get into the car, someone suddenly stopped him. Buzz buzz. The roar of the helicopter was getting closer and closer, and they soon caught up with them. There was a commotion below, but there was no great panic. A car, a helicopter, a ground vehicle, and an air vehicle. Really, everyone said that. Christine proudly puffed out her chest, and suddenly jumped twice, which made people's blood boil. What should we do next? Although the scene just now was crazy, it seemed to be of no use, and the helicopter still chased after him. Stark walked up to the reporter and glanced at the other person's figure. Just when Stark was about to have a good fight with the other party's camera unknowingly left him and went towards the sky. Seeing Stark turn around, Christine also showed joy. Soon, the burst of super combustion finally rushed out of the top of the building, soared into the sky, and floated in the air. It's amazing, how did they do it? Boom! The super burning car suddenly accelerated and rushed out, and the whizzing bullets seemed to be left far behind. Hi, of course. Many people thought it was a specially arranged magic show. The moon is quite round tonight. A huge full moon appeared beside the two of them, like a huge moon disk close at hand, exuding a cool look. What? The female reporter didn't hear clearly. Well, not bad, but I don't like criminals. I use the money to invest in the development of medical equipment and agricultural technology. Let's end the curtain with fireworks. The moment the deadlock missile locked onto its target, Merlin's eyes were fixed, and he simply pressed the button. This magic idea is really good. Christine also stopped chatting after hearing this, and quickly took out the shooting equipment and pointed it at him. The faces of Colin and the police officers in the helicopter were suddenly terrified. Boom! A ball of fire exploded in the sky over Brooklyn, and the scattered parts were as gorgeous as fireworks. It's done. After admiring his masterpiece, Merlin started the atomic engine again, turned around, and gradually disappeared into the night sky. Vomit. Super burning just stopped in the refitting shop. Frank could no longer hold back the car door, and quickly grabbed the trash can and vomited wildly. God knows what he just went through. Merlin took off his plague black robe and eagle beak with a normal expression, then left his workstation and went to the notebook to check the settlement of this mission. You're crazy, Frank complained with some lingering fear after picking up a bottle of ice water to rinse his mouth. You get used to it when you vomit. I'm not talking about this. Can you tell me in advance before you do these thrilling moves in the future, so that I can be prepared? Don't worry, there are usually novice benefits, and luck will not be too bad. Merlin in front of the computer waved his hand and said indifferently. Frank, I'm so special. Is it the first time you did those extreme moves just now? This joke is not funny. He was stunned and asked with an expression of disbelief. I'm not joking. Today is just a test of the new car while taking advantage of the novice benefits. Testing a new car. In other words, this is your first time driving this car. Frank was stunned again. Yes, just today. Merlin was interrupted before he could finish his words. Wait a minute, you'd better shut up. Frank stretched out his hand to stop him, and then calmed down. He really didn't dare to continue asking questions. Sometimes it's good to know a little less. But regarding this incident, he had no doubts about one point. It's a miracle that I'm alive. In fact, the previous planning was perfect, but in the end it was too crazy to be true. You must not take this guy's car next time, jailbreak is safer than this. Frank, who had killed all night, was also a little tired, so he slumped on the sofa in the lounge and rested. Merlin, on the other hand, was clearing the task rewards. The reward for this mission is a total of $600 million US. According to 30.00% 3, I will divide 190 million. The rest is yours. Let's see if it's in the account. Merlin took out his mobile phone and shook it to Frank, who was thinking. Okay. Frank immediately took out his phone and clicked on the Rockstar app. When he saw the excess amount in his account balance, he nodded, then thought of something, and asked curiously. Can the money in it be withdrawn? Of course, according to the ratio of 1:1, as many as there are above, you can propose as many as you want. Well, I didn't expect that after a mission, I would become a rich man. Frank was a little surprised when he heard that he could withdraw cash. The share is still just my planning money, and you have to count the money you borrowed for my equipment this time. This is my personal investment. 1 slanted magic weapon, 1 pump shotgun, 1 armor-piercing pistol, 3 explosive bullets, 1 sticky bomb, 16 grenades, 12 armor-piercing bullets. Like a money addict, Merlin began to settle the accounts one by one. There are more than 200 million in total, and 200 is enough. Frank, you are really a black-hearted businessman. The total remuneration for this task is only 600 million, and 30.00% of it is divided out, leaving more than 400 million. After deducting another 200 million, after he settles, there are only more than 200 million left. If the other party hadn't erased the zero, I might not even be able to share 200 million. Is this a capitalist? Frank transferred the money to Merlin with a depressed face. Although he still had a huge sum of more than 200 million yuan, he was not so happy when he thought of the total remuneration of 600 million yuan. The big revenge has been avenged, but I feel a little depressed. Hey, is there anything else you want to buy? Do you want to order a skeleton horse armored car? Buy some bullets, by the way. Merlin smiled happily after receiving the money, and then continued to ask. Frank, good guy, the more than 200 million in his pocket has also been targeted. The two chatted for a while, and it was getting late, and Merlin had to go home as soon as possible, otherwise it would be troublesome if George took the initiative to find him. The shutter door was slowly closed, and Merlin was sitting on the locomotive, looking at Frank, who was about to leave. He suddenly asked, "Do you have any plans for the future?" Frank paused, but did not answer, seeming to be thinking. But Merlin continued, "Since the law cannot punish evil, why don't you become the punisher yourself? This game is a game, and it's all about the player. I'll think about it." Frank didn't answer directly. After speaking, he put on his coat and quickly disappeared into the dark night. And the skull t-shirt he painted is still on his body. The next day, an announcement and a reward order quickly plunged New York City into turmoil. But this time it was in Brooklyn, so it didn't affect the Manhattan area. Otherwise, what happened to the Lizard Man and what happened last night would be enough for George to have a headache. The Hell's Kitchen biker gang and the Mexican-Irish gang were massacred by one person, and the police lost a superintendent and 3 police officers in the pursuit. All died in the helicopter. And everything revolves around 2 people. A person who is on the bright side and everyone knows, a retired army soldier, Frank. The 3 gangs were slaughtered by the other party alone, and the motive was obvious, which was to avenge his wife and daughter. The reporter tracked down the case, and soon the court's verdict was exposed that day, and the pressure on the police against the society doubled. As for the other mysterious person wearing a plague costume, no one has found out yet, but there are already some signs through checking Frank's traces. But when everyone was discussing about the real man Frank and the mysterious plague doctor, a topic quietly became popular on the internet. A popular game in Apple City, morality and the rule of law. Because in the scene, the sloped magic weapon and the super burning sports car are relatively classic vehicles in the game. Many people who played this game were a little afraid to confirm it at first, but after opening the game and seeing the exact same appearance, it had to be determined. The game forum also exploded. Guys, I'm sure, last night in Brooklyn it was Bevel Magic and Super Burn. Picture JPG, picture JPG. To be honest, the scene of the super burning confrontation with the helicopter under the moonlight is really cool, and it has been set as a wallpaper. Merlin's beard. I don't know when the offline mode of the game will start. Hurry up, hurry up. I want to become an offline player. Rockstar, hurry up and send an invitation code. Urgent, urgent, urgent. I want to drive the tyrant. I want to kill the evil spirits. I want to drive a tank. I want to rob. Add a friend upstairs. What happened last night directly excited all the players, and no one knew which great gods were hidden among them. With the comparison of pictures one by one, many people's attention has also focused on the game released by Rockstar. Originally, it was only a popular game in the game circle, but after the fermentation of the internet, it quickly radiated to the surrounding area and went out of the circle. Giving him love for this game has also entered the attention of many people. Just because of the lizard man's silence, reporters who couldn't find the hotspot were like sharks smelling something fishy, focusing their attention on the game. Give him love, a crime simulator. The game's speeding car reflects reality and the progress of technology. A game that exposes the fig leaf of Eagle Country, a real-life game that really appears in reality. The top of Brooklyn, with the full moon as the background, speeding cars and airplanes, the collision of crime and justice. Who is justice? Who is evil? Why is the law an evil glove? Satire. Look and see her eyes, they glow. As for intelligence, a little novice reward was given out when the system was bound, and now a little more has been added, and the skills that were somewhat jerky in the past have now become transparent. Hi, I have something to do now, so I can ask Pepper to act as my agent. But it's a pity that there is no space-based gun for Gerardo in his heart. Even after his repeated observations, he still didn't see any flaws. Because of this incident, the hot girl he could have brought back also ran away. It's like an abyss. With the R-Star subsystem, you don't have to worry too much about production. The vehicles and weapons sold at that time can be completely replaced by automated assembly lines. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Tyrant Mk2 technology, Skyfiend fighter technology, Sparrow helicopter technology, Killer Whale nuclear submarine technology, Star air fighter technology, Avengers Fortress fighter technology. R-Star subsystem, an artificial intelligence system based on offline real people. In addition to the large amount of funds saved by myself, if there are subsystems, there is still no problem in setting up the initial production and platform. But after he went back and carefully observed the captured images, his expression became more and more serious. Reward distribution. Merlin, do you have time now? Come back as soon as possible. We are invited to a banquet. George at home said while looking at the invitation letter sent by the mayor in his hand. Nightclubs, villas, apartments. There is no shortage of crazy and smart people in this country. Tony Stark sat on the sofa with his legs crossed, and the events that happened in Brooklyn last night were played in front of him. He is waiting for Daredevil Matt, who agreed last week, but the other party should be busy fighting crimes, and he hasn't come yet. Just update it, and it will come up after a while. Then there is only one possibility, that flying car is real. The report the next day also confirmed his conjecture. Hi, Uncle George. He originally thought that the sports car galloping against gravity on the glass wall of the business building last night was a magic show, because if it was carefully planned, it could still be done. He took out his mobile phone, looked at the display and couldn't help raising his eyebrows, and sat up straighter. Skyfiend, Tyrant, Killer Whale. As for the managers, Merlin temporarily recruited some internal people as NPCs on the internet, and the property rights and lease rights were also transferred to him. Originally, he wanted to wait until Iron Man Stark's transformation, find a way to get close, and learn about artificial intelligence. But now there is something, he can only leave first. Life is like a play of games. Okay, I'll go back right away. Manhattan, Stark's private villa. Even when the helicopter exploded and the car flew away in full view, he still thought it was a magic trick, a grand magic show. This guy hasn't come yet, I don't know what he's up to. He muttered, then closed the modification shop, and rode his bicycle towards his home. As there are more players and more tasks to perform, his property will definitely increase accordingly, and then the player will buy property from himself, and a perfect cycle will be formed at that time. Intelligence +1. This update also issued 10 rewards at once, and each one touched his heart. After accepting the technique of rewarding Dejin, Merlin focused on the additional subsystems after the system update. The prestige value has reached 500 million, and the offline mode is on. The song is Midnight City, and he often plays this song while driving. Now the Liberty City server has been detected, and the Rockstar subsystem is activated. The host is requested to recruit players as soon as possible to build a Liberty City game platform. The caller was his uncle, Obadiah. After hanging up the phone, Merlin checked the time. Hearing this, a flash of understanding flashed in Merlin's eyes. Among the hot spots, 9 out of 10 are about him loving the game and Frank. When you regard the world as a game, you are also a member of the game. While Merlin was researching the subsystem, the cell phone in the bag suddenly rang. Merlin, if you don't leave, there will naturally be players to clean up later, and it will add more fun to the mission. Because of your electromagnetic pulse launcher, many technology companies will come to participate. Of course, I hope you will regard the above words as farts. But not everyone can be the designer of this game. Banquet, why did you invite me? Merlin was stunned when he heard this. But how did he do it? With a rocket engine. He could think that there was only a rocket engine for the time being. Ding-ling-a-ling. At this moment, his phone vibrated. Merlin's reputation also exploded, and the system fell into an update. After Frank eliminated the 3 gangs in Hell's Kitchen yesterday, their properties were all taken over by Merlin, including funds, real estate and industry. Time gradually came to night, during which some surrounding residents came here to buy vehicles and weapons, but nothing else happened. With the heated discussion and attention on the game for him in Apple City, as the scope of radiation becomes wider and wider, areas such as Los Santos and Florida have also begun to be affected. In this system update, this subsystem is the most important, and it is also the basis for the offline game platform. Selling herbal medicine, smuggling. No, I'm here to invite you to a banquet. Did you know about the Midtown High School Science and Technology Fair? There was a high school student who developed electromagnetic pulse launchers and atomic energy technology. This is a genius. To put it another way, if you don't like it, it's a genius even better than you. Tony rolled his eyes and was about to refuse, but when he saw the love he had just downloaded, he seemed to think of something. Okay, I will attend. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.